your mind, it's time to redefine. You're the spiritual quest, leaving the rest behind. Ungovernable, breaking through the status quo. We untamable, watch our spirit elevating consciousness. Yeah, we on the rise. No system can hold us down. We're reaching new heights, breaking through the chains, breaking through the wall. Ungovernable energy, watch the empire fall. Crashing in the norm, shedding old beliefs. Seeking truth, the purpose, finding inner peace. Unleashing our potential, setting our soul free.
Here we go. It is Sunday night. We were just talking about MySpace and
I had a
MIDI
MySpace.
music. Yeah. Let
MySpace.
us know in the comments if you had a MySpace page and what your theme song was for your MySpace page. This is not MySpace. This is Ungovernable. I'm Matt. This is Jocelyn.
Technically, it is your space.
Well, it is. Wow. Unless the powers that be end up deciding to censor me. But that being said, actually, that's a great lead-in. Please help us out with a subscribe, and upvote, a like, a follow, or a share, because the algorithm doesn't like us because we drink wine and we speak our mind. We don't censor ourselves.
No, that's a problem.
And we talk to awesome people that are the same way. And so we need some help. So there are people out there that would find this information interesting. So help us out with the algo. So that being said, dude, I totally had an intro last week that I didn't script, like write down.
Yeah.
And I should have, because it was like I kind of like knocked it out of the park last week, didn't I?
For this show?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even remember.
In the moment, you were like, "Ooh, that's good. Like, we should remember that." I'll find it
I
somewhere.
remember saying that.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah. You remember saying that, but you don't remember
that you did a good job.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah.
To quote Rodney Dangerfield, we're off to a great start. All right. So let's introduce the wine. We have a fantastic guest this
you have
week.
to introduce it. I can never say them.
Wait a minute. You said you had a special reason.
I thought it's a fish. I go by labels.
Yeah.
I like labels.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a dragon, and it's the year of the dragon.
Y'all, she was like, I have a special reason why I picked this wine. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I know.
Dragon, but it would be amazing. It's the year of the dragon, and I am a dragon.
I got to be honest.
I'm a dragon.
I didn't know because she thought it was a dragon and it was actually a fish. The name is Domaine Saint. Oh my God, French. Domaine Saint Apollonier.
And again, it's Dry Farm Wines.
Apollonier.
No, Apollinaire.
Yeah. It's from Côte d'Aron, or it is a Côte d'Aron. Yeah, it's from Côte d'Aron, and it's red wine. It's Grenache, Syrah, and Cinsault. And this
Dry Farm Wines.
Just is Dry Farm Wines as usual. We haven't found a drink sponsor for the show.
Well, you were talking about somebody.
Yeah, there's a couple.
A few.
Dry Farm Wines definitely, we're up for sponsorship because we drink enough of your wines. But also Blood of Tyrants.
That would be
was
awesome.
Another one.
I haven't tried Blood of Tyrants, but now I want to.
We also have a couple of local connections as far as like microbrew beer and stuff like that. Though I might get a little bit of agita on the program. So, all right, you do
intro our beautiful
you guest. Do you are you drinking straight from the bottle? Oh my God. Okay, you're sniffing it. I had a moment there.
I
y'all.
have.
All right.
When I make tomato sauce, I do.
Yeah. By the way, we are live. So if you have questions for our guests, comments, please let us know. Throw it into the comments. We would love to have a conversation with you.
I spilled it.
Without further ado, party foul.
Spilled it like 3 times.
Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest, Michelle Burbidge. Michelle's an integrative healing practitioner and the visionary behind the Perception Connection program, dedicated to guiding individuals, particularly women, out of survival mode and into a life of autonomy and authenticity. with a deep academic foundation in psychosocial, cognitive, and neurolinguistics. Michelle expertly integrates modern psychology and spiritual practices to dismantle the internalized narratives of fear and coercion.
And so, that just brings me back to the bear and the man question that's been going all over the internet.
Wait, hold on.
I know it's totally out of the... Yeah, but go ahead.
Put a pin in that.
Pin in it.
Fear and coercion. We're definitely anti that, which is fantastic. Her approach fosters profound personal accountability, radical self-love, big thumbs up on that one, empowering clients to reclaim their inherent freedom and rewrite the scripts that have long governed their lives. There's so much more I could continue to talk about Michelle, but I want to bring her on and actually have her talk about herself for a little bit. So, Michelle, how are you doing in the wonderful, probably not white north right now, but in the wonderful north of Canada? How are you?
I'm great. I love you guys. I love your interaction, and you guys are hilarious.
I would just like to say, I meet more people from Canada lately, and I don't like Canada. I think they're after the whole trucker thing and everything that happened, and I don't like what's his name. But what's his name?
Trudeau.
Castro's son. You weren't a fan of the trucker thing?
Oh my God! But I meet more cool people from Canada.
Yeah, hold on. No.
I'm like,
wait. We get it. The trucker basically protest.
The convoy.
Yes. Yeah. Convoy. Yes. Yeah. That was like a big deal for a lot of people down here in the U.S. Was like a big thing for you guys, or what?
Oh man, so many of my friends were in Ottawa, and it was a huge thing. We were part of the convoy. We didn't go all the way to Ottawa. We went to New Brunswick, the New Brunswick border, which is just like kind of the province that's adjacent to us. I would have loved to have gone. A lot of my friends were there, and there was a lot of love, and there was a lot of just standing up for what we believed in, and it would have been a great time.
That's awesome.
It's really cool people from Canada.
So before we get going, you had a man and a bear question, but before we get going,
no, I
haven't heard this man and the bear thing.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
maybe I should say.
I'm not online much. I kind of live under a rock.
You are much better off. Let me tell you. What is the man and the bear question?
That's this thing that's been going all over the internet, where they asked a bunch of women if they'd rather be stuck in the woods with a man or a bear.
Oh,
this is the feminist thing.
We were talking about the fear,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
The fear and something else that was in your bio. And if you'd rather be stuck in the woods with a man or bear. And then people took that, asking women that. And of course, so many women said bear. And then people were asking their husbands, would you prefer your daughter? See, that was what I wanted to say to you. Would you prefer our oldest daughter be stuck in the woods with a bear or a man?
Wait,
that's like the next iteration that I've seen.
My daughter hasn't been issued her first firearm, so I would rather her not be in the woods in general.
But if you had to pick one
herself
for your daughter, would it be a bear or a man?
Do I know the man?
No, and you don't know the bear either.
I mean,
what kind of a bear is it?
You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
That's
like a Build-A-Bear? No, like an actual bear.
Like an actual bear.
Yeah.
Most people said a bear.
I don't know. What do you think, Michelle? Would you personally, rather be stuck in the woods with a man or a bear?
I would go with a man.
There you go. Why?
Yes.
And I would want that for my daughter as well. Well, I mean, being that I try to help people overcome fear, I think either one of them would be okay. But I think that in general, I think humans are more predictable than animals. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just seeing it through kind of rose-colored glasses. But I don't really have that same kind of. I think that at our core, humans are pretty good, and we would take care of who we have to take care of. We would take care of one another. I don't know that I would feel the same way about a bear necessarily, especially. Well, it depends on the kind of bear. Is it a polar bear? Is it a grizzly bear? Is it a black bear? I would rather be in the woods with a black bear. A black bear, probably. We had one that lived behind our house. They're wonderful.
Yeah, that is
bear,
true.
not so much. I don't know. They apparently eat you while you're still alive and chatting with them.
Oh my God.
This is something else that I need to these cultural questions all the time are these kind of highlight reel kind of things. And you probably get just as much as your fair share in Canada about this stuff. It's and we had this conversation the other night. You get a highlight reel of 5 or 10 people.
They probably asked 100.
This video is all young girls being I'd rather be with a bear because it's less, dangerous than a toxic man, that kind of thing, right?
I hate the term toxic masculinity. And that's one of the things that
I don't like that one either.
And the point of my conversation was, yeah, they probably had to ask like literally hundreds of women, right? And most of them are like, a bear? What are you kidding me? They'll eat my face, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously I would be with a male. And then to gin up this kind of narrative that they wanted or whatever to get clicks or whatever, they post the 10 women that are like, oh yeah, like men are
I
dangerous.
think I might have picked a bear.
What? Seriously?
Yeah. I think I would pick a bear.
I think you have a better opportunity to defend yourself against a man than you do a bear.
Listen, if it's my time,
That's what
I'd prefer a bear take me. I don't know.
I have a whole lot of deprogramming to go in along with all of that conversation, but it's totally beyond the scope of this podcast.
Yeah, there's so much there. All right, so let's talk about some actual things that could help people.
Sure.
I wanted to start off by talking about, you have an incredible backstory, one of which is really specific to kind of like your health history.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of give you a platform. One, share, and I think I put it into the description in the video, but also I want you to share where people can find more information on this. But you have kind of a very unique personal story as far as health and that journey that you've been through or that you're still going through. So I would love kind of like, that background information where people can find more information about it, but also like the Reader's Digest version of what you've really been through health-wise and how that's kind of contributed to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I wish it was unique. Really, is the first thing that I'd like to say. It's interestingly not very unique, as I've found as I've started working with more people and as I've met more people who've come through the kind of program that I do with my colleagues. It's not very rare or uncommon. In fact, it's probably more the norm, especially these days, as it was. I may have thought that it was a while ago, or so my story began, I guess, probably in 2015, earlier than that, but really when I noticed it was 2015. And I ended up I had a minor infection, and I went in and I got the drugs because that's what you did back then, and I didn't know any different. And it ended up turning into something that was much, much worse. I had something, they call it interstitial cystitis, and it starts off with a UTI, and most women are probably pretty familiar with that. But then when their drugs don't work anymore, when the antibiotics don't work anymore, they throw you in kind of a big heap, what I call the interstitial cystitis garbage can, because if the drugs don't work anymore, then they don't know what to do with you. They can no longer give you a Band-Aid. Right. And so that's where I was. And basically I said, well, what do I do? And they said, well, there's nothing you can do. You just have to learn to live with it. And I said, absolutely not. This is ridiculous. There's no way I can live with it. And so I went to see the specialist, as they send you, and they told me to
Can I just ask you real quick, when you say it started with a UTI, what did it end up being in the end? Can you say it again?
So interstitial cystitis is all of the symptoms of a UTI, but when they do the culture, which is like a 50-year-old test that is really outdated, they can't find what they call it's subclinical. The results are subclinical. That doesn't mean that there's no bacteria present. It means that there's not a sufficient amount to be causing, as in their mind, there's not a sufficient amount to be causing the kinds of symptoms that I'm experiencing. And this is happening with hundreds of thousands of women across the world. And so that's what it is. It's essentially a UTI that just won't go away. And there's nothing that they can do for you. So, they tell you diet. Oh, it's really awful. It's really,
holy crap.
Yeah. So I have on my Facebook page, I have a video that talks a little bit about that. If anybody is suffering with that, there's a lot of women out there who are. But I just want to say right off the bat that there is a way through it. So if anybody is suffering with that, I want you to know that it's not the kind of life sentence that they want you to think that it is. So in the end, once I was going through that, I ended up I developed anxiety, and I developed depression, and I developed food intolerances because, I was terrified of food because they give you this list of food that you're supposed to stay away from, which now I realize is totally bogus.
Was that like
The
Candida diet kind of stuff?
well,
Or
there we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Okay.
like the Candida diet, which is effective as long as you're on it. And as soon as you start to go off it, your Candida comes back again,
Okay.
which is so yeah, that's another thing that I could chat about for ages. But anyway, the short version of it is it's really, and now there is a certain diet that is actually beneficial, but that's not the one that they give you. And they want to really just give you Band-Aids and well, that's what healthcare is, right? Healthcare is Band-Aids.
Oh,
That's
Yeah.
the Western model.
they're really good
Very
at
big.
creating
Yeah.
Band-Aids.
They love those.
Yeah.
They love Band-Aids that need more Band-Aids.
The
Yeah.
Band-Aids that create the need for more Band-Aids. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I went to specialists. The specialist told me more of, well, you're just going to have to learn to live with it. They told me that they could give me a treatment, which is basically something called installation. And they just kind of jack up your bladder with a whole bunch of like lidocaine and all this crazy stuff.
Mm.
And it works for a little while for most people, but I had like a 50% chance of making it worse. And so I thought, well, those are really good odds. Thanks so much. So I decided to go to a naturopath, and the naturopath was basically, I found it really interesting because in my experience, I know some people have had great experiences with naturopaths.
Mm.
But in my experience, what happened was I found out that they were, at least here in Canada, it seemed like they were all trained within the same system, except the naturopaths were using natural products to put Band-Aids on your symptoms. So they weren't doing any of the testing that I needed. They were basically saying, instead of giving me this pharmaceutical drug, they would say, well, try this supplement that I'm going to sell you and make money off of. And then, come back and see me in like, a month.
That's
And we'll see, so just one supplement when
Yeah.
I needed like 40 of them to bring my body back to where it needed to be.
Just a question. In Canada,
Mm.
because I don't know how the healthcare system works there, is like, are naturopaths in Canada in the same healthcare system? Or like, because here you got to pay out of pocket for a naturopath
do.
or a holistic. Is
Yeah.
it the same?
You still do have to pay out of pocket. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're still trained in the system. They're still trained in universities,
Mhm.
right? That's where they're trained. They're not trained in holistic where uh, it's something outside of the system where they're learning how to do what they do. They're not using new information. They're kind of using the same old information and just, sort of throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that they told me to do ended up making me worse. So like my cortisol, they would look at my cortisol and without doing any testing for my cortisol, which is like a neurotransmitter, right? It's a hormone, sorry. And instead of doing any testing on my cortisol to see where my levels actually were, they just went by my symptoms, assumed that my cortisol was low, gave me a supplement that would boost my cortisol. And the problem is that my metabolized cortisol, which they would have known if they had done the proper testing, we use a Dutch test. But if they had done that, they would have seen that my metabolized cortisol was actually really, really high. So what they were doing is boosting that even further and making me even worse.
Oh.
So yeah. So, I mean, testing is where it's at, in my opinion. That's what I do. And that's what will tell you a complete picture of what's going on inside your body. And then, hopefully we can use some food to, ideally, what we'd be doing is using food to help, fix the issues that are going on. But the problem with that, as I'm sure you guys understand, is that our soil is so depleted that our food is shit right now.
Ooh.
So we're not actually getting the kind of nutrition that we used to be able to get out of it, even if we're growing it ourselves. And, maybe in several generations, we'll be able to get the soil, if we're growing it ourselves, we'll be able to get the soil back to where it needs to be in order to provide us with the nutrition that we need. But at this stage of the game, we need supplementation in order to get ourselves back. And fun fact, here's another new stage of hell. Canada is trying to put a
supplements.
Have you heard about that?
No, but they're doing it here in the United States in
Oh,
homeopathy. Because I love homeopathy. They're trying
Yeah.
to outlaw homeopathy. The FDA
Yeah.
wants them.
Yeah.
They don't want.
They don't want to
They don't
outlaw
want us
them.
healing ourselves. No,
But-
they don't
Really?
want to outlaw them yet.
But what they do is they essentially create a chilling effect and a regulatory barrier, right?
Yeah.
And so what typically
exactly it.
happens
Which
is with that regulatory barrier, and I know I'm
But
preaching to the choir, what
No, but
happens
other
is
people don't know.
they end up essentially creating a
carry
Frankenstein's
them.
version of what was actually naturally occurring beforehand. And so
Yeah.
what you typically end up with is at best, like a neutered or watered down version of
The
what.
kind you get in drugstores.
Yes, yeah, like and typically the regulatory impact is, I mean, like we were just talking last week, we had on a family that does regenerative farming, and they sell and consume raw milk, which, by the way, in New Jersey is illegal.
It's
in a
illegal
number
here.
yeah, and
apparently, I just saw it today. I was just telling you on the patch,
What?
this new
yeah.
bird flu is getting into the cow's milk. And so there was this big article
bird
today.
flu in the cow milk, but if you
but they said don't go. Yeah,
Michael's watching. Michael's watching. So Michael was on
Hey,
last
can
week.
you send it to Canada?
Yes.
Can you send it here to Canada?
but the big article said don't drink raw milk. That was like the big article. I'm like, oh, of course it is.
Wait, but
It's a new
why?
Virus.
But why?
Because the pasteurization this is what it said. The pasteurization process kills the virus, making it safe.
Yeah.
So drinkable from the stores is what they were saying.
So if you drink raw milk, you're
like,
going to get bird flu.
Again. Yeah. Here it goes again.
Yeah.
Is what I was like, this is ridiculous.
So here's one of the things that is really interesting, is that raw milk is one of the things that actually, antibodies. Raw milk is one of the things that is one of the best things we can do to heal interstitial cystitis. One of the absolute best things we can do. So one of the one of the factors of interstitial cystitis is something called oxalates, and it's present in almost all foods, anything that's naturally occurring, anything that's not a food-like substance, but mostly in what we call healthy foods. So that's really high in spinach, it's really high in almonds and almond flour. So look at what's happening right now. Everybody's going to these healthy diets. They're taking out gluten and they're replacing it with almond flour and things like that. And nobody's hearing about oxalates, but there's an incredible, oxalates are huge in almonds. And one of the things that helps us detox oxalates is raw milk. Well, dairy in general. But I mean, I don't recommend pasteurized dairy to anybody. If you can only get pasteurized dairy or conventional dairy, I say you have to cut it out of your diet. You can't eat that. It's not a food product. So I'm big on, teaching people how to make, we can't get it here. It's illegal here. So of course I don't teach anybody local how to make any of those things.
No, we would never do.
However, in theory, I teach people how to make, sour cream and yogurt, and butter is incredibly easy to make from, I've heard, from raw milk. And
in Minecraft.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah,
exactly. Like library.
But it helps. So it's not just interstitial cystitis that is affected. It's brain fog. It's joint pain. So a lot of fibromyalgia. A lot of that is caused by oxalates, and yet we never hear about oxalates, right?
Yeah.
I never heard about that from any of the naturopaths that I went to. I certainly never heard about it from my doctor or my specialists. A lot of people just have no idea what that is, and they keep on going, eating their supposedly healthy diet, doing what they can do to make their life as good as they can.
Yeah.
They're trying really hard, but without the right information. Anyway, so the milk will bind to the oxalates and help it flush out of your body. That's essentially what I was getting at. It's really healthy.
I love it. What do you say?
Michael says he has a dog and his name is Bingo. Yeah. It might be Carrie, but I think that sounds like Michael's personality. Actually, Michael's gonna love this conversation because y'all are homesteaders too. So we're gonna get to that.
Cool.
But,
and he homeschools too.
yes, and they're also homeschoolers. But so I'm disheartened by your experience with naturopaths, because we've had positive experience. Now, that being said,
she's saying it's different in Canada and the United States.
Yes, yeah,
but I'm also sure that there's great naturopaths here. I'm sure there are. I was probably just not very lucky with the ones that I went to, and I don't disagree with naturopaths as a rule. I don't. But
yeah, my one point to pretty much everyone is, and again,
You've got to do your research.
I'm someone who's like, I don't like labels at all. So like politically, I'm like the only thing I'll call myself is an agorist, which is pretty close to what most people are who are homesteaders, independent, sovereign, like that kind of thing, right?
What did you call it? An agorist?
Oh. Yeah. So it's a subset of basically anarchism or libertarianism. Right.
Well, then I need to learn what that word means.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, like shameless plug, like there's something called the New Libertarian Manifesto. It was written by a guy by the name of Samuel Konkin III, Konkin.
Okay.
And he essentially writes about how the resistance, right? Like the revolutions that will happen in the future really need to be done by the people like yourself and your husband and your family that are essentially choosing to buck the system and go out on your own and do your own things and create parallel economies, create
Yeah.
a parallel culture, right? Because the culture that's been built now is essentially going to crumble on itself. It's destined to. It can't sustain itself, right?
Yeah.
And the more people that vacate that will eventually contribute to the fall of this centralized, corrupted, what you called like fear-based coercion, right?
Mm.
That rules. But so that being said, a lot of times, if people have like a good relationship with this type of physician or a bad relationship with that one, the one thing I always say is like, don't ever take, no, or we can't help, or there's no solution for an
As an
answer,
answer.
right? We have I mean, technically you, but we have a story to tell about basically losing a pregnancy and then having endocrinologists tell us that the only solution was to, cut out the thyroid and do
While I was pregnant.
radioactive iodine treatments and all this other stuff.
Oh,
And it was
Yeah.
her naturopath at the end of the day who was like, look, if you take this mushroom and you
No, it was a
juice a half a head of
cabbage.
half
No
a head of
mushroom.
cabbage,
Where'd you
everything.
get that?
No. So like goitrogens are something that most people don't hear about, right?
Mhm.
And so it turns out that diagnostics, right? She would you had a blood test
I
every
had to
week.
get a blood test, for a while.
Yeah, just to measure the activity of her thyroid, right? But without
I'm
the
so glad to
diagnostics,
hear that they did that. That's amazing.
without the
Yeah.
diagnostics, we wouldn't have known whether or not she was hyper
Yeah.
or hypo,
In
right?
the end,
got
for
it.
every pregnancy, all I had to do was juice a half a head of cabbage a day.
Yeah.
It
And
got me through.
and her
Wow.
Western medicine indoctrinated doctor fired her.
Cursed at me.
And-
Told me I was going to kill my baby.
And lucky for him, I wasn't there that day. Maybe lucky for me.
Mm.
But fired her. And I'm like, we almost like should write him a letter and like put pictures of our 3 children that have
3 of
since
them.
been born, like afterward,
Yeah.
right? Along with a scan of your thyroid that still is in your body. But so
Oh, I love to hear that. That's fantastic.
right.
Yeah.
But
I hear that a lot.
that's the one thing I would tell most people is I know this is like a long soliloquy, but don't take no for an answer, right?
Yeah.
Like the moment that you get some kind of prognosis that seems dire and awful, I mean,
Mm.
there are people that have literally healed themselves miraculously
Yeah.
by seeking out other options that when, all the conventional options have basically told them that they're screwed, basically, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And I read through your story and I was like really inspired because you found someone who ended up essentially being your mentor that kind of like saved your life. Would you say that?
I absolutely would say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
who
know
was
where I
that?
would be right now if I hadn't found my integrative healing practitioner. I was kind of at my wit's end. My anxiety was so bad that I had a home-based business at the time. I had an Etsy shop, and we were homeschooling our daughter. We were foster parents, so we had started to get involved in that whole system. Don't get me started on that.
Mm.
And
Kidnapping for profit. Yeah.
oh, it's yeah, it's just anyway. Yeah, and so I didn't know. I I didn't know what I was going to do. I just and it was just by by the grace of God or the universe or what source, whatever you want to whatever you call it.
I love that.
I what's that?
No, I love that. We talk to people from all kinds of faiths and spiritual backgrounds and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
like, there's this kind of like common thread that like pulls a lot of people together. But so anyway,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
So,
Being so
by the grace
rude.
by the grace of that. I just happened to find one of her videos one day. I was scrolling through YouTube and I found one of her videos and I watched every single one of her videos because at this point I had already spent probably anywhere. I stopped counting, but I had spent somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 trying to get my health back on board. I was trying naturopaths and I was trying everything that they suggested for me to do. I was trying, all of these people on the internet who said, go raw vegan, which that made me worse. And I know now that, for some people it makes them better. My body didn't react well to that kind of a diet.
Mhm.
And so I tried everything. And then when I finally found her, I said, I don't think I have, any more money to invest in this. But I said, okay, I have to give it one more last ditch effort. And I believe in this. I watched everything that she had to say. And I said, this is actually something that sounds logical. It sounds rational. We do the testing, we give your body what it needs to heal, and then we step out of the way so that your body can heal itself. And that is exactly, and it took a long time. There were a lot of tests. There was my body was completely depleted. So my anxiety and depression went away first, which was fantastic because that was half the problem right there. Just me being mired in this fear, this just incredible fear that this is never going to get any better. So once that went away,
the psychosomatic element of it, right? Yeah.
Well, and there was actually a psychosomatic element of it. And I think that it does happen for a lot of people. And I don't like to say that because it feels like I'm belittling their experience as if, it has to be something physical in order for it to be real. And it doesn't. It can be created in your mind and experienced in your body just as much through the fear as it is through a protozoa or a bacteria or, a Lyme spirochete or something like that.
Yeah. So,
it absolutely can be a psychosomatic, or it can be part and parcel. It can be, bits of column A and bits of column B. So yeah, I don't know where I would be without her. I probably wouldn't be running my business. I was laying on the couch most of the day. And that went on for almost 2 years. Just when I was healthy enough, meaning not, I had about an hour a day where I didn't feel so consumed by anxiety that I could do nothing. And during that hour, I would research, I would Google, what can I do? Where I was in all the Facebook groups, which are just an absolute load of terror. You go in there and there's people in there saying, oh, you're never going to heal it. Just accept it. And, I've been dealing with this for 20 years. And I thought, oh man, I can't do this for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I kind of, I pulled myself out of those. And that's one of the first things that she told me, you got to get out of those Facebook groups because it's all about fear. And that's when I started learning how fear in our body can manifest in such incredibly powerful ways. And it manifests with a lot of things. So, fear can make you take a vaccine so that you don't lose your job. Fear can, make you believe that you need to go to university and be $40,000 in debt so that you can buy this house, so that you can fill it with stuff that you don't need, so that you have to have a car payment so that you can get back and forth to the job that pays for all of this stuff. And it's ridiculous. That's all fear. It's generational baggage. That's what it is, right? Fear makes you send your child off to school for, 8 or 10 hours a day. And because you need to go to that job to pay for your house, to pay for the car, to pay, it's all of that is fear. And when we start examining it, we recognize, wow, I don't need any of that. What do I need? What I need could probably fit in a backpack that I took with me to go to. Yeah. So I don't mean to preach.
Beautiful.
No, definitely keep going.
That was like a perfect little line of logic.
Can I get a hallelujah?
Yeah, I love it.
No, that's incredible. If you were to kind of put into like a short summation what that kind of like integrative healing journey was like, was it mostly like mental and spiritual? Was it
well, you said there was testing.
Yeah, I mean, like you're obviously kind of like testing, and I think something I read on your bio on the website, I believe it was, where you had talked about kind of like neurotransmitter imbalance. What does that look like? Like, I mean, how do you end up first identifying that you have a neurotransmitter imbalance, and then how do you kind of work towards rectifying that?
Yeah. So that's just one of the tests we do, but we start off with genetic testing. And you don't have to use your real name, by the way. Everybody's all worried about that. I'm not doing genetic testing. They can't have my data. But we start off with genetic testing.
George Soros needs my 23andMe. He's doing important stuff with it. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. We do need to see it, though. It's very helpful to see it, because then we can see, if in certain genes, you have variations, which we used to call mutations, but there are just different presentations of your gene function. And when we look at that, we can see what's happening with your serotonin, which is the happy gene. We can see what's happening with your dopamine, which indicates like symptoms of ADD. You see a lot of people right now where I'm in survival mode. I'm dysregulated. I'm in fight or flight. I'm in all of these, kinds of massive feelings of upheaval. So when we look at your genes, we can see what your what the predisposition is for you to express. And then we look at something called organic acids, which tells us what is actually being expressed. So we can see where you should be in terms of your genetics. And then when we look at your organic acids, we look at where you are. And then we know what we have to do in order to bring your neurotransmitters back into balance, because we can see where you should be and where you are. And so then we know what to do. So that's exactly how we would do it for neurotransmitters. Then we look at thyroid. So we would look at we do comprehensive blood testing, complete comprehensive blood testing, tests that doctors won't do. Unfortunately, we end up having to pay out of pocket for that because there's a reason that doctors won't do them. Like I have to look at your homocysteine. It tells us, if you have a certain mutation, whether or not that is active. And if that is active, then we have to address that before we can address anything else, because that's going to compromise your health in so many different ways. Excuse me. So genetics is really an important piece of what we do. And then everything else kind of relates back to your genetic information. If you look at your genetics, it's kind of like your unique blueprint, and what you could potentially express. And then we're looking at all of the rest of the information to try to either turn that off or balance it out. So if there's something that you're expressing in a gene expression that's happening for you, then there's certain things that we can do in order to turn that off. And once we do that, then we can go on to balance your body with other testing.
Can I ask you a question? Because I am down the deep rabbit hole of the medical medium right now.
Oh, okay.
I love it. But because of my thyroid past,
Right.
I'm reading the Heal Your Thyroid or Thyroid Healing. I don't know what it's called, but it's one of the medical mediums books.
Right.
And he talks about the connection. I'm just wondering what your thought is about this. He talks about the connection between thyroid issues and Epstein-Barr. Do you think they're connected?
So, okay, first of all, I'm not a big fan of medical medium. I'm probably going to alienate a lot of people by saying that. But the reason that
I'm just new to it myself.
Yeah, no. So the reason that I'm not a big fan is because I don't like anything that is one size fits all. And anytime that I hear one size fits all information, I advise people to run in the opposite direction. So I'm not a pro on medical medium. I just know that a lot of the things that I've heard has been a lot of, you should do this and don't do this. But what I know from my own health and from my clients' health is that for some people, you should do this. For some people, you shouldn't do this. And it's never, I could look at 2 people or 10 people with the exact same symptoms, exactly the same symptoms. And what they need in order to get back to a state of equilibrium balance is going to be different. So if I sit there and say, this is connected to this, well, for you, yes, it very well could be connected to that. But is that true for everybody? I don't know. The other thing about Epstein-Barr, Candida, Lyme, all of those kinds of things, when you can bring your body back into a state of balance and equilibrium, those things take care of themselves. Almost always. Now, there are sometimes we need to tweak it a little bit. We have to do a little bit more gut work. We have to look at your what's happening with your bacteria and protozoa and all of that kind of stuff, and just see if there's something that we can kind of clear up at the very end. But usually a healthy body. Now, why can 100 people go into the woods and have ticks on them, and 1 or 2 people end up, and they say, well, it's caused by
I think this all the time. I do. We're in Jersey where the Lyme disease is huge. And I'm always like, why did they get a tick and not a rash?
Yeah, well, I can tell you why. We have a body bank account, and we're all born with a body bank account. And so for some people, it's high. We have a higher balance than other people. For some people, even if we had a high balance, we make some really shitty choices with our food and our lifestyle, and that depletes our body bank account. So we may get bitten by a tick, and that might cause Lyme disease, and that might start this whole cascade of issues. But the tick wasn't the thing that made you sick. The tick was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Okay,
it created the vulnerability.
It creates the vulnerability that makes the whole cascade fall into place, right? So then what we do now is we bring your body bank account way back up again. And then the Lyme disease isn't an issue anymore. Our body can take care of that. But we have to bring that bank account back up again in order to get you out of the red and in order to get you healthy and expressing true health, as opposed to just treating the Lyme. Because what will happen is if we just treat the Lyme, whether it's related to Epstein-Barr or whatever it's related to, if we just treat the Lyme, then what are we doing? We're bringing your health back up to just above that line again, right? And then the next thing that comes down the pike, boom, you're right back there again.
It's so interesting because too, there's a thought process in the spiritual world too. Like if you, I've been doing my transcendental meditations again, which I stopped for a while I was doing other stuff. And there's this piece in transcendental, which is called the unified field. And when you get to the unified field, it's a similar thing, but on a spiritual level where when you are connected with the quantum field, Joe Dispenza talks about it a lot too. When you're connected with the quantum field, right? And you are nobody anymore, right? That's when your body can actually heal and process. Kind of like too in the grounding, we have grounding sheets. It's like when you can like get on the grounding sheets and the inflammation, your body can go back to healing. Not saying that those are the answer, but it's like the same in the spiritual world. If you can get to that place where you are nobody, no thing, right? No place. You can be anybody, anything, any place, right?
Yeah.
This is
I love that you're talking about that. I'm of the belief, despite what I do, I'm of the belief that if we can extricate ourselves from fear, if we can get to a place of, I don't know, sometimes people use the words 3D and 5D, but if we can get to a place where we're actually experiencing like what we can think of as, Christ consciousness or just a sense of awakening, if we can get to a place where we're free of fear and where we're feeling that kind of unity and we're not mired down by have you ever heard of Anita Morjani? She passed on. She had stage 4 cancer. She passed on. She had what she called a near-death experience. And in that, whatever that experience was, she was told to go back and feel no fear. And when she came back, she had no fear, and she gradually got herself out of the cancer. But there are a lot of experiences with that. And I do believe that if we're able to get ourselves to that spiritual place, that we don't have to really worry about, testing and supplements and all those other things. I do think that we can heal ourselves. I think that we can heal ourselves with the power of our mind. I truly believe that.
That is a big pill to swallow, though, too, at the same time. I mean, in this culture where we live now, this time, I mean, it's a big task.
Well, it's not strange, though, because, or not that it's not strange. It's not.
Well, that's why supplementation is needed.
It's not commonplace to see that play out in, say, like popular culture, right? Because popular culture very much so is about control, right? Like we talk about fear and coercion, and so like I've talked about this in the past on the show, the Gnostics and some of the kind of like precursors to what a lot of people would think of as like organized religion. A lot of them would talk about how the way to live a life without fear was to essentially die before you die, right? Like to envision or experience your death before your physical death.
Okay.
And the moment that you're able to actually conceptualize that, then you're not afraid of death anymore.
Right.
And by not having a fear of death, only then can you really kind of live, right? Whereas the vast majority of the rest of people that haven't necessarily conceptualized that, they're constantly in this fight or flight state of existence, right? Where it's like, either they're cowering in fear or they're running away, right? And so, I mean, it kind of makes sense. And just you talking about, say, like cortisol levels. I mean, cortisol levels are basically the fight or flight, neurotransmitter or hormone that's associated with it, right? That's an incredible message, because I think most people, like I would call them, and some people think this is derogatory, but like most normies, right? Most normies are floating around basically thinking that there's this 1 + 1 = 2 equation to health, right? Like either I get sick or I don't get sick, and that's
well, there's how many people I'm on some weird, strange Facebook groups that are just regular women, because I think it's important.
Maybe
to know
all the other Facebook groups are the weird, strange ones. No, I'm kidding.
No. All these women are on Ozempic, and they're like,
"Oh, Jesus Christ,
I love it," and I just throw up every time I take an injection 8 times, but it's great. I feel great. I just throw up for 8 days. Like people, that's a normie to me. Like, how could you do that?
That's something. I don't know if I have a name for that.
I don't know what that is. But that's the culture we live in. Like I'm in a bubble. We are in a bubble because we have so many holistic people and holistic minded people and freedom minded people and homeschoolers that I run across this group and one person says something about Ozempic and there's 150 responses. Oh yeah, I do it too. And I'm like, wait, didn't you guys hear about this? I'm like, we live in a bubble.
Well, no,
you say,
I think everyone kind of lives in a bubble, but
that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, like what people don't understand is that you get to choose your own bubble.
Yeah, we did choose our bubble.
Yeah.
I'm putting that over here.
Yeah, you get to
Absolutely.
choose your bubble. Absolutely, you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, it's better to choose the bubble based on what you align with and resonate with and what you're moving towards rather than what you're moving away from.
So this was something that we talked about a couple of episodes ago in terms of like getting to higher resonance. Is that something that's contemplated in kind of like your healing path? Like, was that really
Absolutely.
something that you were
Absolutely.
working toward?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. That
Yeah.
is getting to higher well, I call it higher self in my program. But yeah, so it's a step-by-step path of moving away from ego choices, which are fear-based. Because I look at when we talk about ego, what I look at it as being, walls that we're building, to kind of protect ourselves from hurt, whether it's, physical, psychological, emotional. So the more walls we can knock down, the more choices we're able to make from our higher self. And then we're making choices from a place of unconditional radical self-love, as opposed to making choices out of fear, which is what our ego does, right?
I love the combination of like that whole bringing in the higher self, right? With the testing and the supplementation and dealing with the fear and having that psychological kind of piece to it, but as well as spiritual. I feel like it's like everything together. It's like in a big cookie dough.
You know what it makes me think of, and I apologize if I'm like diminishing this to something that it shouldn't be, but so like when I had my turn in corporate America, the best places that I worked for, organizational culture wise, the tenant was typically like trust but verify, right? And so this idea being that you have some kind of trust that what you're working toward, whether it be diet or your spiritual practice and things like that, are having positive effects, but then making sure not to just be blindly accepting or thinking that it's doing something, to actually then also allow, say, like the testing and the analytical side of things to verify, one, what the problem is in the beginning,
right? To make
but
sure
two,
you're not
also
giving something like
whether or not you're
cortisol.
actually impacting it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we could look at it that way. The way I tend to look at it is that it's a stopgap. It's a stop on the way. So most of the people that I work with, and myself included, I mean, I'm not above that. I can trust my higher self to a certain degree, and I'm constantly working towards that. But in this moment in time, I'm not there yet. And so I am relying on the testing in order to move myself forward so that I can get in a better place, feel better about my body. And the better I feel about my body, the less anxiety I have, the less depression I have, because at this point, I trust that, this course of action is going to get me to a place that gets me out of that. If I were further along on that path of living from my higher self, then maybe I wouldn't need that at all. And maybe there are people out there who actually don't need the supplements anymore, and they have moved themselves past that, which is fantastic. But I kind of see it as the supplementation and the testing is a waypoint on the way, so that until I get there, well, we have this, and this has worked for a lot of people, and let's see if this works for you. It's where you put your belief. If you truly believe in your heart that you can heal yourself without anything else, then I think that you will. I think that you will. And if you truly believe that, medication, pharmaceutical is going to help you, then it probably will as well. I think that wherever you put your belief is what will help you.
Yeah.
I don't, for me, I don't put my faith in pharmaceutical medication. I have seen that supplementation has helped me, but I've also seen that I use a program called Safe and Sound, which is a listening program. I felt that has helped me. So there's a lot of places that I put my personal belief. And then I say to other people, if that hasn't helped you, then try this, until we get you to the point until you get yourself to the point where you don't need any of that anymore. It's kind of like training wheels, I guess.
So I totally want to talk about homesteading and unschooling, but I do want to ask, so did you kind of grow up in the Western medical style, or is it something that you found during this thing that you had happen with the UTI, or was it something that you kind of grew up with?
I had no idea about natural healing when I was growing up. You get sick and you go to a doctor, and the doctor makes you better again.
Yeah.
That was absolutely what I believed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had no idea about, any agendas or any kind of, world order.
Like your mind was like
that. Yeah, very quickly. Now, I've always been someone who's been open to having my mind blown.
Yeah.
So I read a book by Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but it was a different book. It was called Illusions. And
I
at
have
that
that book.
time, you have that book?
I do. It's a little
I
black one.
It's tiny. Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
black, but it's got a feather on the front. It's still to this day. It's a tiny book. It's kind of quirky. It's one of my favorite books because I mean, it shows you that you can just snap your fingers and have what you want, right?
Hmm.
Now, should you? I don't know. That's another question for another day. But at that moment, I was 16 years old when I read it, and I thought, oh my God, wouldn't it be cool if that were true? And in the beginning of the book, it talks about this little creature that is in a riverbed and is full of all these little creatures in the riverbed, and they're all hanging onto the side of the riverbed, river to your life, and they're terrified to let go. And one day, one of the creatures said, I'm incredibly bored. And if I don't let go, I'm going to die of boredom. So I'm just going to let go and see what happens. And, you know, it gets bounced around and it gets bruised and it gets hurt. And eventually it flies up and gets carried along by the current. And it looks like it's flying. And so all the other creatures are looking at it saying, oh my gosh, you know, it's the Messiah. It's come to save us all. And the little creature is saying, no, no, no. All you have to do is just let go and you can do this too.
Yeah.
But everybody's too afraid to let go.
Yeah.
And so I've remembered that ever since I was 16, which has been longer than I want to admit. But really that's what we need to do is we need to let go and we need to trust that, you know, we've got this.
Yeah.
And that it's true for health. It's true for homesteading. It's true for relationships. It's true for raising our kids and sending them to school. It's true for everything. You know, just let go. You don't have to trust what the people out there say.
Yeah.
We can figure it out on our own.
So before we transition to some other topics, I want to make sure that people know
Where
it's
to get in touch?
newperceptionwellness.ca, right?
Dot
That's your
com.
website?
.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Newperceptionwellness.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And so that's essentially.
Well, I'll tell you, Rue, before you go on, like so many women I know in my holistic community cannot get the blood work they want. There's like one or two pediatricians and general practitioners around that people keep their lips zipped about because they know everyone wants to go to, like, oh, I can't lose my appointments. She happens to be our doctor.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. That's amazing.
But like she'll get you any test.
Nice.
Well,
But most people, and they'll be like, well, you don't need that. You don't need that. And
Right.
I see it on my holistic groups all the time. People
Mhm.
looking for blood tests just because they feel the way you feel.
Yeah.
Like you need to have that just backup in a sense,
Yeah.
right? And they
Yeah.
find it. There's like 2 doctors I know in New Jersey who do it, who will
Mhm.
give you anything.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's
Well,
it.
I think a lot happens in the US gatekeeping wise by insurance companies.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think you've probably had a similar, if not more extreme experience with that, right, in Canada, because I mean, there's essentially, unless you have like a Cadillac insurance, like private insurance plan, right, you're going through the federal or the province plan, right, for
Yeah.
your
So we
health.
don't have a 2-tiered system here.
Yeah.
We can pay for private lab testing, but we don't have so blood work, for example, here in Nova Scotia, I can go to my doctor and get it ordered and then it's paid for.
Mhm.
Or I can go to, there's one private lab here in Nova Scotia that will do the testing. And I still have to go through a naturopath. Anywhere else in North America, I can order the tests. I can do a requisition for anybody.
Mhm.
There's 2 provinces here and one of them is Nova Scotia.
Mhm.
So I can't requisition my own blood work from a private lab. And there's no such thing as insurance paying for that. Insurance will not pay for that here. Our insurance pays for things like, I don't know. It'll pay for ambulances. It'll pay for, sometimes it pays for chiropractic and kind of peripheral wellness. I think it's called, I don't remember what it's called, but anyway, it'll pay for those kinds of things. But
Yeah.
if we want to go get testing done here, we have to pay for that ourselves.
I mean, we're paying
private
for it
testing.
here. We're paying for it here too. Insurance doesn't cover it.
Well, no, it depends on the plan, but I mean, what a lot of people get here in the United States is there's a lot of people that are singing the praises of single payer in Canada, right? And the one thing I've noticed is, regardless of whether or not one is better or one's worse, I think they both suffer from a lot of the same issues. And one of those being the gatekeeping when it comes to basically what we've been talking about, this kind of like tailored, whether you call it health or treatment plan or things like that. I think there's so many kind of like these rote, SOPs that, oh no, we only ask for these type of tests for this type of ailment.
Yes.
And if one of them comes back positive, then we prescribe this. It allows for absolutely no tailoring or deviation, that kind of thing.
It's efficiency, though. It's
Well,
efficiency for the pharmaceutical business.
well, yeah, they're governing to the mean, right? Like, and like you said, I mean, like, maybe a good portion of people take XYZ pill and they feel better, right?
Yeah.
But just for that many people, there's also tons of other people that you give them that, and it doesn't fix the problem, right?
Or it
Or it
starts
doesn't even
another
address the
problem.
problem. Yeah, or it
Or it
creates
starts
something.
another problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
just look at what we take for, depression and anxiety and those kinds of things. I think it's staggering the percentage of people that it actually
Well,
helps. It's so low.
the number of what I would consider like normally well people in our society here in, like, we live in North Jersey, that are taking things like mood altering drugs like Klonopin and antidepressants and stuff
So
like
sad.
that, it's
Yeah.
it's unnerving, because you're like, you should be a normal person. Like, why are you on these things?
Yeah.
And a lot of times
And it's
just
so easy to
because
fail.
that's the standard, right? Like, that's what we do,
Yeah.
And it's it's in the water. I mean, because they like pee it
Oh
out.
yeah,
It
there's
gets
so
in our
much of it. It's in the water.
There's
Yeah.
so much in the water. That and birth control.
Yeah.
All over the water. Like
Is
when
it-
they
Let me ask you that question. In Canada, is it like commonplace? Like, do you know lots of people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm taking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 prescriptions just because it's through government healthcare, and it's, I mean, like,
Yeah.
our equivalent to government healthcare, the way it would be in Canada, would be, I think probably the closest things associated with it would be Medicare, right? And then also the Veterans Administration here. So
Which is
like our combat veterans and our military
so
veterans,
bad.
they go to the Veterans Administration Hospital.
They're just the VA hospital. They just get bags of drugs.
It's just a pill factory.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, is it a similar dynamic in Canada? I'm like, are people basically just being prescribed tons of medications?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what you do. You go to a doctor, and that's what they will do. They'll prescribe you medication. Like that's basically what they're there for.
Or you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and they prescribe you medication.
It's really hard to get into it
because you've gained weight or you have something else and they give you a prescription.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here it's incredibly hard to get into a psychiatrist. And they're the only ones that can prescribe for mental health. Well, the mental health we live in Nova Scotia. It's a population of like just over 1 million, and there's I think there's like 75,000 people here without a family doctor. So they end up having to either go to the emergency room or they have to go to a walk-in. Oh, it's dire.
Oh, wow.
The situation here is absolutely dire. Yeah, and so so is it easy to get medication? Absolutely, it is. It is absolutely easy to get medication. You walk in, you say I'm anxious, and you get, you have depression, you get benzos, or you walk in and you talk about anything. And one of the scary things is that trying to get off of that is really difficult. So it's one of the most commonly prescribed medications for anybody who has some kind of, emotional disturbance. And it is one of the most difficult ones to get off of. Now, I mean, if you take it as prescribed, where you're supposed to be taking it just as a rescue, whatever, then I can still, manage to work with those people to get their neurotransmitters back on track. Some people are on that daily for 20 years. I actually have people who have been on a benzo every single day. I mean, I don't have them as clients because, I mean, there's so little that I could actually do for them because at that point it changes your brain.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's a question. I don't think that it's not known. It should be a black label drug.
Yeah.
But it's prescribed like candy. Oh yeah, here's a benzo. And then next thing you know, it literally changes people's brains. So yeah, is it easy to get medication? Yes, it's not really easy to get. So say opioids or something like that. But in terms of getting like antibiotics, which is why we're seeing all of these antibiotics. Yeah. Very easy. As soon as you walk in, you're like, they assume that you're there to get an antibiotic. They don't go to any other line of, try this. No, I mean, and even sometimes for viral, if you go in, yeah, I mean, antibiotics don't do anything for viral, for viral issues, but then they'll say, oh, well, you've had it for over a week, so maybe it's bacterial. So let's try this antibiotic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, and then we wonder why there's all of this antibiotic resistance and
Well, yeah, and
interstitial
not to mention the fact that I mean, you're talking about like your body bank account or whatever, right? Like, what
Yeah.
about someone who
Reading that.
goes through 40 or 50 years of
Yeah.
antibiotics that don't just kill the bad, right?
Yeah.
Like they kill the good as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, I mean, we've seen huge upticks in people that have issues in the United States with ailments that are associated.
Candida,
Well, yeah,
all these
Yeah.
things come
it's
back
associated with basically
Yeah.
all of the good bacteria being stripped out of your body,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, your strep was a couple of days shorter than it would have been had you not gotten
Yes.
antibiotics. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you also there's no like to give like a highway example, right? Like there's an on ramp to the highway. They'll give you the antibiotics. They never give you the off ramp, right? Like so
Mm.
they never prescribe probiotics, or very rarely.
if you have
Right.
Or
yeah.
actually, interestingly enough, like having to do with kind of like your health story. One of the programs that we follow is the Highwire with Del Bigtree.
Do you follow him?
No.
Oh, you should
Yeah.
definitely be
I
on the
guess I
Highwire.
probably
The,
should.
the Highwire is fantastic.
Thehighwire.com.
Yeah, the
Okay.
highwire.com. And
Mhm.
he was all over the COVID stuff before it even
Like,
happened. I mean,
Oh
like,
yeah.
like
Wow.
Nostradamus level stuff. But so there was someone on his program who had, I believe it was Crohn's, right?
The raw goat milk one?
Yeah, I think he had Crohn's.
Crohn's. That was
He had
Crohn's.
really bad Crohn's,
We
like
talked about it last week.
debilitating Crohn's.
Wow.
And what he used for himself was raw goat milk kefir,
And
Yeah.
raw eggs.
right? And
and
raw
raw
eggs.
meat.
Yeah. Well,
And
no,
raw
he
meat.
eventually went completely raw, like, and he like sources it from very clean places.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he like knows the sources. But
Wow.
how he initially kind of started to heal his gut was with raw goat milk kefir. And I remember thinking that was something that, like, just myself growing up, I was taught that was the recipe for bacterial
Disaster.
illness
Yes.
and disease and death,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And here there is this person who basically was given a death sentence, and he essentially revitalized his life with
Wow.
this stuff,
Yeah.
absolutely incredible story.
And it's not the only way. I have friends who have really healed Crohn's almost fully, just from other ways too.
Yeah.
But there's so many different ways out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
There are so many different ways. Yeah.
yeah,
And again,
so-
it comes down to what you put your belief in. I think that it comes down to, if you believe in what you're doing and is going to heal you, then I truly believe that it's going to heal you.
Yeah.
If you absolutely believe in your heart that it's going to be the way, then I think that it can be the way.
Oh yeah, and we're I say this repeatedly, like, whether it's placebo or not, if it's beneficial, who
good.
gives a shit,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. I agree. Yeah.
And which in and of itself, if you talk to scientific types, of which I am one, like I went to college for biomedical engineering. I was one of those people.
Oh my gosh,
who
one
was
of
like,
my
And
friends
we
did that as
never
well. That's so funny. She was
Yeah.
2 days away from getting her doctorate.
I don't know
She
how
quit.
I don't know how this happened, but when we got pregnant before we were married, don't tell our daughter. But we never
was very
had the
close.
vaccine talk. We never had the homeschooling talk.
Yeah.
Never. And then, but I grew up opposite you, Michelle. I grew up very, very holistic. So I was never
Oh.
vaccinated for anything. I
Nice.
had all kinds of, never really given anything except when I had Epstein-Barr, in which case I was given, I mean, not Epstein-Barr. Yeah, Epstein-Barr. No, when I had mono, which is Epstein-Barr.
Which is, yeah.
So when I had that when I was a teen, that was the only time I had antibiotics. And and so when we never had that conversation, and then all of a sudden we got pregnant and we started talking about vaccines. I gave him some books. What book was it? The
No, I
Dr.
mean,
Sears.
yeah, the first one
book?
we read was Dr. Sears, but then I did like my own research and that kind of thing, and
I
it
had
was
to
like,
tuck
You
in-
didn't
I had
do
to,
your own
tuck his
research. Oh my
scientific
goodness, no.
yeah, God forbid, right? But yeah, so I was educated basically in risk management, and so a credit to the people in the program that I did go through, the professors. So I went to Tulane in New Orleans, and the professors that I had very much so would talk about, like, cost benefit analysis and risk management. And in a lot of cases, they would basically talk about how things weren't worth prescribing or things weren't worth doing because the benefit wasn't necessarily worth the cost that was associated with it. And so that very much so kind of like seeped into when we were
Talking
talking
vaccines.
about whatever it was,
Whatever.
vaccines, use of antibiotics. It was, and so I very much so was raised from the standpoint of like when I got sick, it was like, pop a couple of NyQuil and a couple of aspirin
Yeah.
and wrap yourself up and sweat it out and basically just kind of suffer until it's gone, right? When the first time you had any kind of major illness, like she was up taking vitamin C and running around and doing stuff, and I was like, you need to calm down and like lay down and like take some time, right? Like it was like a culture shock, but I find it very interesting, like this idea of like bubbles and kind of like silos of information and whatnot. That and I remember thinking to myself when I was reading your story, because your story starts, pre 2015, but you really start telling it in 2015. That must have really laid the groundwork for you coming into 2020.
Oh yeah,
where you were
right?
like, wait a minute. You were like, wait a minute, I've seen this story before, right? Like
Here it goes.
You know what's funny though? This is really funny. When it first sort of broke,
Mhm.
I was making I was a seamstress. That's what I did. That was my Etsy shop. I'm a sewer. And so when the whole thing first hit, I was making masks.
Hmm.
I was making for my friends and for my family, and I was like, you got to wear your mask. You got to do this, and I was including with them this sheet of instructions. And I said, when you take your mask off, you have to make sure that you take it off like from here and only hold it by the straps. Don't touch the front. Put it right in your wet bag. Put the whole wet bag in the washing machine on hot, and don't touch it again until you take it out. And so, but nobody was minding my instructions. And I thought, well, wait a minute. And nobody was talking about it. Like nobody with the powers that be, all of the Health Canada, and they weren't issuing any of the same instructions. And I thought, what the heck? And then all of a sudden I saw these people with like 1-ply mask. Mine was like 4 plies because I thought, no, this virus is not getting through my mask. Okay. And I had like a non-woven inner layer. It was, I had Fort Knox on my face.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing like, well, nobody's enforcing a rule where it has to be of a certain quality or anything. They had these little like flimsy pieces of gauze essentially, and everybody was grabbing them and putting them down on the table. And then they were like, just using their hands it was a shock for me at that point, because I thought, well, if this is a real thing, why is no one enforcing like the fact that you can't just shove it in your pocket and then take it back out and put it on your face again? Like
you were like, if we're going to do it, let's fucking do it.
If we're going to do it, let's do it. Like, this is the thing. Why don't we shut everything down for 2 weeks until it goes away, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore? What's happening? But that wasn't what was happening. And that's when I started thinking, wait a minute, something weird is going on here. This is not what it seems to be. And so, yeah, at that point, I was prepared to accept the fact that, my cognitive dissonance might be engaged.
Yeah.
And I was fine because I recognized that from happening before. And so I thought, okay, here, yes. And that's when I felt the here we go again.
Yeah.
And then I started.
Your husband had to go. So you were already married to your husband at the time?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he had to go through it too.
You're not going to believe this. So my husband was working in long-term care. He was they called it a management position. He was a scheduler.
Okay.
So long-term care, like a senior's home. And in 2019, here in Halifax, there was a massive outbreak of this weird, mysterious illness after a hockey team came back from Wuhan, China, and nobody knew what it was, but they were calling it a flu-like illness.
More stories of this.
So my husband was going into work. His counterpart, he did 4 days on, 4 days off. So his counterpart was sick as well, weirdly enough. And she called in sick every day. So he worked like 12 days straight with a temperature of over 100 every single day, which is, I don't know I can't translate the numbers, but it was high. And so he was in there and he was, coughing, and there were no masks back then because this was 2019 and nobody had ever heard of a mask. So he was going to work every day, and they were happy to have him come in, doing his 10-hour shift. And he did 12 of them while he was sick, and nobody batted an eye. They were thrilled to have him there. And yet in 2021, when he was perfectly healthy, he was no longer allowed to work there anymore. So, I mean, like, can you even? Can you? It's a crazy world gone mad, right? And so he was prepared.
We swear we had it in January.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you probably
We
did.
did.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
But
probably
we've
did. My
heard
daughter
more
had it.
stories of 2019. Like we've heard a lot of stories
Yes.
of
Oh,
people
yeah.
being sick and swearing they had it in 2019.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was here way before they insisted that they told us that it was.
Yeah. But so now they basically mandated the vaccine for him, right? In the
Oh,
long-term
yes.
care.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. So it started off originally, there was like 50% of the people that he worked with said, I'm not taking that shot.
Hmm.
Because they were offered it early in 2021 because he's in healthcare. So he was offered it maybe in January, excuse me, when it first came out.
Hmm.
And so originally, everybody was saying, no, I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. There were about 50%. And so because he is in staffing and he gets to see, you know, who's going for their shot and who's not going for their shot.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the when in October, when everybody was laid off because that didn't have the shot, he was the only person that lost his job.
Hmm.
So everyone else either vacated, which not
Mhm.
many people had done that, or they end up acquiescing and doing something that they didn't want to do. And I mean, I don't blame anybody for that because fear is a powerful motivator, right?
Oh yeah.
If they feel like they have to keep their home and their car and they're afraid for their children that they're not going to have a roof over their head or not going to be able to feed them or whatever it else that was that they were afraid of, fear is a powerful motivator. And no, people, I don't. And if people just chose to go and do it, then that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. The problem that I have is the fact that, you know, it was a dick move, right?
Mm.
And we know why now. We can clearly see why. And I'm glad that it happened because everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it did because it turned our life in a completely different way. We
Yeah.
went in a completely different direction. And so, you know, we sold some of the assets we had. We bought a piece of land. We started actually moving on our plan. When we first got together, we had planned on building an earth ship. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes. Yeah. Pounded earth and tires. Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Rammed
Yeah.
earth and tires. So that when we got together, that was our dream. We thought about, you know, oh, I'm so interested in doing that. And we, you know, we kind of lived our life and we had the car and we had the house and we had all those things that we had to pay for. So we couldn't do this crazy earthship thing. And then when he lost his job, we thought, well, you know what, we have to make some different choices because if this is happening, what could potentially happen next?
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to do anything out of fear, but this is something that we wanted to do. And this is an opportunity for us to move into something that is in alignment with us. And so, you know, we found a piece of land that was beautiful. It's on a lake. It's 27 acres. And we thought, you know, we can actually start a community where people are just going to leave us the hell alone and we can just do what we want to do. And so that's what's that?
Yeah, she said we all want that. Yeah, like
in my holistic moms groups, how often people are like, "Look at this plot of land. It can be our commune." Like, no one will mess with us all the time. All the time.
So I have to tell you about who my personal hero is. You need to keep telling your story. My 7-year-old is FaceTiming me right now upstairs, so I have to go make sure. I have to go make sure there's not something going on. But you keep talking. I will be right back.
It's wonderful. But what's happened, what I've noticed is how that's happened is that now that everything has opened back up again, because I think that's what's happening is that you're going to close it down and then, oh, look, you have your freedom, and then close it down. And then, oh, look, you have your freedom. And I think it's kind of accordion like that until people are just used to not having our freedom. But interesting. And at that point, you know, maybe it's going to not be as easy to make the choices that we made last time. So, but I don't know. It all happens for a reason. But what I saw that happened is that at first everybody was like, oh, yes, we're doing it. Let's do it. And we're buying in. And now that the world has kind of opened back up again and everybody can go back to their jobs and everybody can keep their homes and everybody can, you know, do their quote unquote normal life, that fewer people are actually interested in doing that. But the thing that we're missing too is that it's not that just that I want the government to leave me alone. It's I want the village. You know, I want to be able to raise my children with other homeschoolers and with other moms and with other kids running around where I just have to say, hey, you know, go down to her place for a couple of hours while I'm doing this. And, you know, we can all get together in a great big group kitchen and make meals or do what we used to do when we had a village, when things were, you know,
not the village
intense.
that Hillary Clinton is talking about. Yeah. We're not talking
I don't know anything about that. I don't know. What is that?
Oh, no, she's from Canada.
Yeah.
Also, we don't get news on Facebook anymore. So
when politicians in the States talk about a village, what they mean is we own your children
We'll
Oh.
worry about them.
Yeah,
For you.
Oh, yeah, no.
you'll basically be a bystander when it comes to raising them.
Oh, gross.
Yes, yeah.
Hillary Clinton had this big ad at one point. It was all about we need a village to raise our children, and that's
Yeah.
what she was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah.
village is operated by armed guards and propaganda. But
Oh, yeah, no, that's
actually,
now they've
I've
co-opted our term for village. Oh my gosh. I've
yeah.
forgotten.
Oh, they'll co-op anything. I
Yeah.
gotta tell you, my personal hero. I've told this story on this channel before. I'm still confused. I guess we just don't have enough people who watch us on YouTube. But my personal hero is a gentleman by the name of John Joe Gray.
Oh, this
And if
guy.
you ever look up this story, the guy was basically what we would call in the States a sovereign citizen. So he didn't, I don't think he had a social security number. I don't think he had a driver's license. For the most part, I don't even know. Maybe he had a birth certificate, and that's how they knew he existed. But he essentially got pulled over for like a driving violation. And the police officer wrote him a ticket, and he was supposed to show up in court. And he didn't show up in court. And so they issued a bench warrant for him to basically be arrested. And so they then uncover that he hadn't paid taxes in his entire life and all this other stuff. So they basically show up to his like 20-acre ranch in Texas. I think it was in Texas. And the local sheriff, along with the feds, try and bring him to justice, right? He's going to stand trial. And he basically said, no, I'm not coming out. Like
He's not leaving his house.
I'm just going to stay here. So
Wow.
they laid siege to his property for something like 10 or 15 years.
Years.
Yes, yeah. He was completely self-sustaining.
He had a big family.
4 or 5 generations worth of his family that lived on the property.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And after a while, a bean counter came along, and I believe it was the FBI. And he was like, a bean counter at the FBI was like, guys, we're spending $1 million a year to lay siege to this guy's property, and he owes like a couple $100 in like fines. He was like, what are we doing?
Just leave them alone.
And they just packed up and left.
Nice. Nice. So you just have to hold on.
It is like the quintessential example of how, just because something is legal doesn't necessarily mean it's right? Or the converse of that, meaning just because something's illegal doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's this philosophy that I think a lot of people need to get a little bit more understanding of, or at least introduced to, as far as that goes. But
yeah.
I love the fact that you guys moved out on your own. I mean, like, what was like the biggest challenge? Was it just kind of like eliminating the debt and moving out? Was it a psychological barrier? I mean, like, what was the biggest challenge to make that change?
Well, we're still working on getting there. We have so here's another thing. In Canada, if you own your own land and you own your own RV, which we do, you're not actually allowed to live in it full time. You're not allowed to live in it full time.
What's the point of that?
Oh my goodness.
I don't understand.
We don't care. It's not like we're listening to them. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't care about that.
Wait,
rule.
you can have an RV and your own land, but you can't. Do they mean like on your, like you could live in an RV traveling, but not on your own land? Is that
right? So you can't park it on your land. If they find out that you're living in your RV full time, they will kick you out. And you're allowed to go live in a tent, but you're not allowed to live in an RV.
What?
Yeah,
What
it's
so once every 30 days you camp out in the tent, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that checks that box, right?
Yeah, they have actually evicted people from their own land because they're living in it, and they've confiscated their RVs. It's crazy. Having said that, that's not our issue. We have some spring road restrictions and all that kind of stuff, but we did sell our house. We sold everything basically in January, and we bought a geodome. Because we had looked at a bunch of different options, and what we're going with is a geodome. So it's a 33-foot geodome. And for us, it just made sense. It was easy to construct. It's very wind and snow resistant. It's very strong, sturdy. And so that is what we're going with. And our RV was incredibly warm. We just, we decked it out with all of the whatever winterization stuff. And we had a generator, and we had it's getting to be spring here now, so we don't have to use it anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, so we're moving into that, and we're getting ready to plant. So we're just getting ready to start our permaculture garden, and
Awesome.
yeah, and we're going by the idea that once we get it together and have everything, so we're looking at severing a certain area for tiny homes. We're hoping to do that, and we're hoping to sell off a couple of acres as well because people want to have their own space. Some people just really want to be able to own their own land. And so one of the problems here is that a lot of people who want to get into a lifestyle like this, number one, they think that I'm going to be living in a hovel without any electricity. So we have a huge solar array. My husband knows all about that. I don't know, but it's massive. I think we've got like something like 32 400-watt solar panels.
Okay.
It's bigger than we'll need. We wanted to do it for our home and the community center that we're hoping to build next. So it's the dome first, and the community center will be next. And then, yeah, so people want to get into their own land. They want to be able to do what we're doing, but traditional bank mortgage here in Canada, they won't finance land. So it's really hard for people to get into, because right now, I don't know what it's like down there, but here the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of everything is just
So bad.
ridiculous. So people can barely afford to live from day to day, having to pay for their massive house and their car and all of the stuff that they have in it.
Yeah.
And now paying for groceries and gas on top of it, people are really struggling. And so they don't have the means to be able to save like they used to be able to put towards a piece of land so that they can get out from underneath the government. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's by design.
Oh, it's
By design.
yeah, no, it's completely by design. And I would actually argue, so a lot of people, especially when you look at some of the kind of like mainstream financial news and stuff like that, they'll try and impress upon you that this is like quote unquote inflation. Okay.
Right.
I actually, so my day job is I write a financial newsletter,
Oh, wow,
and
cool.
do a live cast. And so,
And the name is.
yeah, it's it's turned some people off, but it's called the Anarchist Investor. It's a lot about
I
gold
gotta
and
check that
silver.
out.
It's a lot about gold and silver. It's a lot about real estate and having your own business and that kind of thing. And there's actually a misconception that right now, so like having come from the libertarian world, a lot of libertarians are saber rattling, talking about all of the money printing that happened from all the central banks in 2020 and 2021, and that's caused the inflation. And the truth of the story is that the vast majority of that money never made it into circulation. What we're actually suffering is supply chain disruption. We're still suffering it. And so a lot of my friends in the very beginning in 2020 were of the mindset of like, oh, well, if it saves one life, then we need to shut down and all this other.
Yes. Oh, I heard that so much. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I told them, I said, you're completely naive. You have no concept of, you cannot turn on and turn off the global economy. It doesn't
No.
work that way, right? Like
No.
things are invested 5, 10, 20, 30 years out into the future. You
Yeah.
can't just stop everything and then restart it on a whim, right?
Mhm.
And so we're still suffering from that. Now, that being said, it's not that inflation isn't coming. The worrying thing is that we haven't really suffered inflation yet.
Oh, wow.
The monetary inflation that's coming is going to be something where all this money that was printed, that's warehoused at these companies, will finally be unleashed, right? So a lot of people that follow me are, sovereign gold and silver stackers. They're Bitcoin people. They're, crypto, that kind of thing. And so real estate, believe it or not, is absolutely a fantastic thing to own, to basically hedge yourself against inflation and currency problems and things like that. And the reason why they create such a high barrier to entry for you to own property is because of that. I mean, you've seen a lot of the wealthy people over the last 10 years begin to snap up a lot of these undeveloped properties throughout the world. And there's an important reason
Farms
for
are,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, land for a long time has been such a crucial, asset for individuals and families that, it's actually worrisome because corporations are now beginning to concentrate.
Well, that's right. You will own
Definitely.
nothing.
And
be happy.
And we'll be happy.
Yeah.
Can I change topics?
Go
for a
ahead.
minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you unschool
Yes.
How old is your daughter?
She's almost 13.
Almost 13. So we have a
Yeah.
14-year-old, almost 15, and our youngest is 7, who is FaceTiming you. Have you unschooled all the way through?
Yes. Yeah. We have always, I didn't even know about unschooling until she was like 3 or 4 years old.
Hmm.
And we started then. And then when she was 5, we came out and she was sitting on the step and had her backpack packed. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm waiting for the school bus to come and pick me up." And I thought, "Oh my gosh."
Her
So
eyes are rolling. Like,
yeah.
"No."
No, don't. What do you mean? There's no such a thing as school. And so we talked about it, and we over the next couple of months, we thought it would kind of blow over because this was September, and everybody was getting ready and buying the new back to school stuff, and so we thought it would blow over. And by Christmas, she still was talking about it. And so we thought, okay, well, you know what? This is part of unschooling, is letting her make her own decisions. We're not going to be like, sitting there with a candle lit over her head, making sure at 12 o'clock at night she's doing her math homework or anything like that. But if she wants to go and get an experience for it, then, let's make a compromise. So we looked into schools. Public school was absolutely out. We decided to put her in a private school because fortunately we were able to do that at the time. And it seemed to share our values. They talked about a lot of the things that I talked about at the time. They talked about not caring a lot about academics. It was more about the culture and learning how to share and learning how to all of these wonderful things. And so she was in there for a year and a half, and then we decided that she wanted to come out. And so we said, yes, okay. And so she came out for a while, and then she wanted to go back in. And so then it became kind of a little bit like a yo-yo, because she missed her friends, and then she wanted to come out. And then, so we decided we'll try it we'll let it go one more time. And then COVID hit. And so it was in and out based on her choice. I mean, we didn't, kind of let her do the hokey pokey and that sort of thing, but every term that rolled around, she did go back in twice. And then COVID hit, and then we said, no, that's not what we're doing anymore. We're not going back there. It was just an absolute, all this Zoom stuff, and they did all of the, classes online, and they were trying to do school at home. And I'm like, no, I'm not about school at home. But I've never been about school at home. We've always been about just enriching her environment and providing her with what she wants to learn about. And, we did the whole strewing thing, and so, yeah, we've gone back to that ever since COVID. And we just kind of slid back into that. So it was we never really got out of it. We just kind of stayed in that mindset the whole time, whether she was in school or not.
So we have unschooled the whole time as well. And what a crazy world when COVID hit. All these people who became homeschoolers.
Yeah.
All of
They
these
became
people
homeschoolers.
who are looking for all of a sudden like this world in homeschooling. And then
Yeah.
I've noticed that people have fluctuated back out a little bit,
Yeah.
but there's been this influx of curriculum people who wanted to do school just at home.
Yeah.
And it was driving me insane for like 2
Mm.
years. And we were out of it anyways, because we had dealt with a bunch of grief and death. And so I wasn't even doing anything for 2 years.
Yeah.
We took 2 years off. We're like, see you later.
Yeah,
but
I read about that. That must have been incredibly difficult.
it was crazy.
Wow.
But then when we came back to it, it's like a different world in the
Yeah.
groups, in the homeschooling groups. I'm like, I've been taken aback. One of the things that happened recently is we took my daughter. You weren't there. I took my daughter to a play date in a local homeschooling group.
Mhm.
And generally, I've been in the homeschooling and unschooling community for a long time. So they're a very caring and loving community from what I remember.
Yeah.
The actual concept of
The
a village.
actual, and
Yes,
if
yes.
someone gets hurt, 500 people are offering rescue remedy and homeopathy and arnica, and
I love
they have
that for
everything.
you.
That's how it is. They're holistic. They're unschooling. That's my community. I went back to this one group, which was a staple group for me for a long time, but we had not been for 2 years because of all the things that were happening. I went back. My daughter got really hurt. Someone was trying to pick her up. She came down like this on the playground. There was
Ouch.
blood coming out of her nose, out of her mouth. It was really bad. She was okay. It wasn't bad actually in the end, but we went to the chiropractor and the doctor. But what horrified me were these new homeschoolers
Mm.
who witnessed it and did nothing. They all at one time turned their back on my daughter, and I was freaking out. and they literally turned their backs to us and stopped talking completely and opened up conversations with other people. It was the strangest shit I have ever experienced.
Oh
And
my
the
gosh.
homeschooling, unschooling community has always been like beautiful. And they're still my friends who are like 100% there. We're just, we have a lot going on. But at that moment, I was like, this is the new homeschool world. Like, it is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
So we had the
There's been
opposite
a big
experience here.
demographic shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually had the opposite experience, and it might have been because we had a huge rift in our homeschool community
That's
when when COVID hit. I run the local I had a local unschooling group, and we had a huge divide, and more than half of the people went COVID crazy.
Mm.
In our unschooling group. And I'm like, how can you see what's happening with school and recognize, like, that you're able to extricate yourself from that system, but you're not able to extricate yourself from what's happening with the pharmaceutical system? I don't understand that. Like, how do you open your mind so incredibly? Pardon?
No. They don't have our best interest in mind when it comes to everyday stuff, but COVID, they're taking care of us.
Yeah.
Like, I can't wrap my head around that. And so I lost a lot of friends. In fact, most of the friends that I had, I would say maybe I have a couple of pre-COVID homeschool friends who recognized what was happening and kind of like were pulled along by me. In fact, I think I might have encouraged them to come in this direction. But most of the friends that I had, or the homeschooling acquaintances that I had, I guess, they just drifted off, and some of them very acrimoniously. I don't know how to put that. It wasn't nice. It wasn't, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. It was really, it was
You're
a bit
killing
hurtful.
people. Yeah. You're killing people. They're dying because of you and what you're doing.
Yeah, and some of them actually said that to me. I remember being at my daughter's gymnastics class, her acro class, and I wasn't allowed to go in. And I thought that they would support me and say, yeah, this is ridiculous, this is crazy. And they were looking at me saying, well, you're part of the problem. And I was just like, wow. That was since COVID, I've actually found a wonderful group who are very close. They're the arnica people. They're the homeopathy people and the essential oils people, which I wasn't really a part of prior to that. And so those are the people that I was lucky enough to have found after COVID.
I have to say, these people are still around. They're just not in our vicinity, and because I still see wonderful homeschooling.
See,
we just took 2 years off and got unfamiliar.
What I find is ironic is, for a number of years, I've been telling people that public school is prison, and they don't really. They're like that's ridiculous, right? Like we were down like a local pub, and like the post office guy who like delivers our mail. And I was like, well, yeah, that's because public school's a prison. And he was like, like, he had like a pearl clutching kind of moment.
Literally.
But this is the beauty of it, right? Like you're insane until you're not insane. So
that's right.
I've been telling people that for a long time. And my very close like group of friends are all of that mindset. And so there came a time during COVID where the kids went back to school, but the teachers union still did not feel like they were safe enough.
Was that just New Jersey?
No, there was a couple of states where it was.
New Jersey, it was big.
Yeah. So the teachers union in New Jersey is one of the strongest public workers unions. And they decided they're not coming back to work because
we had that here.
Yeah, it's not safe for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had literally a situation where the kids were back in the classroom.
Oh,
the teacher was a talking head on a screen in the front of the room, and they were like, who are we going to get to make sure, like, there has to be an adult in the room, right? So a lot of school districts brought in the local police. So there's an armed police officer walking around the room with all of the kids 6 foot distance with a talking head on the screen. And I'm like, it's a fucking prison. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, it's been this way the whole time. You just didn't realize it. It's just been buttoned up differently.
Yeah.
Our school district was like that.
There's a ton of New Jersey school districts that were exact. It was like there was a meme, and then the next day they did the meme. Like that's exactly what happened. right? Like,
Wow.
Predictable.
Oh
but
my
so
gosh.
that's really part of the reason why we like homeschool and unschool is because we definitely believe that a lot of people. I don't know what you get in Canada, but when you tell someone that you homeschool here in the States, they're like, "Oh, well, how will they be socialized? And won't they
Yeah,
be
yeah,
weird
sure.
and all
time.
this
That's a
other
big
stuff?"
joke.
Every time.
You know, and they'll be
That's
like,
a
"Well,
big joke.
your
Yeah.
kids are going to be different," and we're like, "Yeah, that's
That's
the
the
point,
point.
right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
we
Thank you.
want different
Your
kids."
kids are going to be different. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very strange dynamic, and
Yeah.
the other thing that I also call people's attention to is, and the same thing's true in Canada, that schooling, like public schooling, centralized education, is the recent abnormality. The
Yeah.
vast majority of human
If
history
you
has
look
been
at time
homeschooled.
and expand it
Yeah.
past the Industrial Revolution,
Not even
It's
just
you,
the
you have to go past.
not even
just
just
a
the
minute.
Industrial Revolution. I mean, like if you look maybe even 100 years, because even when certain school districts were beginning to centralize, you had a number of still outlying school districts that had, one-room schoolhouses and things like that. Meanwhile, my 7-year-old is breaking in on the broadcast and getting mommy to help out with something. She actually had. So, does your daughter have pets? Because our youngest has 2 rats now, and they're like her
Oh.
favorite thing on the face of the planet.
Oh. My daughter has a cat, and when we were in Mexico, and I said, "Are you looking forward to getting home and seeing Daddy?" And she said, "Not really, but I really want to get home and see Annie."
Aw.
Her cat is life for her.
Yeah.
Life.
Is this like a free-ranging cat, indoor cat? Like,
She's an indoor cat. Yeah, she's 14. We rescued her from the
aw,
SPCA. Yeah, so we got her when she was 13, and I don't think she's ever been outside. I don't think she could manage, and yeah, so she's 14 now. She's just kind of living her best life.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
cute.
Asha's just in love with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Like animals are the best like learning medium, I think, for children
Yeah.
because there's so much there, right? Like they learn the life cycle, they learn,
Yeah.
caring for something other than themselves. Like
Mm,
it's an incredible learning opportunity.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. We we
And
have we have a bearded dragon, and I can tell
oh,
you,
awesome.
it's awesome, but it's also the most disgusting thing I've ever cleaned up after in my entire life.
Is it really? Why?
Yeah,
What
oh
makes
yeah.
it
Oh yeah. It's
just,
like it's like
is it dirty?
it's just the odor. It's really what
Oh,
it
okay.
boils down to.
Yeah.
We're talking about the
Yeah.
odor of the bearded dragon.
I knew exactly what you were talking
Yeah.
about. But no, we had a rat situation. Our daughter has our 7-year-old has 2 rats who, gosh darn it, they're so cute with her. She comes down and like she'll walk down and out the back of her hair there'll be a rat hanging out,
Oh
and then
my
another
God.
one in her shirt, and all this. I didn't think she could do it, but she's done it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the rat just peed on our couch, so I had to go.
He had to go clean up the rat juice. That is such an unschooling thing to have rats. I think it's quintessential. I don't know why we don't
Yeah.
have rats yet, because it is such an unschooling thing to have rats and
Yeah.
snakes. Snakes is very popular too, and all the things. Maybe tarantulas. I guess I know some people who have those. It's a very American unschool thing. I don't see it
Yes.
as much here in Canada, but in the States, I have a couple of American friends who, actually, one of them owns a tiny home company. They build tiny homes.
Those tiny
But
homes are the best.
oh yeah. I knew her before that, and I think they have all of these really interesting animals that my husband would hate.
I gotta tell you, I don't like the idea of rats, and she tries to throw them on me all the time.
Oh.
But when I do hold them, like when I choose to hold them, that's how I like it to
Oh,
be.
they're so cute. They give you kisses.
They are they
Yeah.
kiss your face.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're so
Aw.
freaking cute.
So, in the permaculture sense, do you have plans for like other animals on your property? I mean,
Are you gonna do
Yeah.
the raw milk thing? I
chickens
guess
or goats or
if you do the
Are-
raw milk, it has to be as a what did he say?
What?
If you do raw milk in Michigan, it's a a share. It has to
The
be a
cow
share.
share.
because the
Well,
state-
see, that's a kind of a misnomer. It's actually not legal for us to do that here either.
Mm.
And a lot of people were trying to get that going where you share a cow and you split the milk. But to have my understanding from what I've heard is that to allow milk to leave the farm without having like the proper paperwork or whatever, the trail of it going to wherever it needs to go to pre-process,
Hmm.
it is a similar fine to being caught distributing cocaine.
What?
Yeah,
Stop.
no, it's
Crazy.
absolutely
And
unbelievable.
yet, what did they like? And yet, they mandated a vaccine during
Right,
COVID that is
right,
giving people, like, changing people's
right.
lives.
Oh,
Killed people.
my
Oh my god,
my mind went
Yeah.
in a completely different direction. I was like, Coca-Cola used to have
cocaine.
legit cocaine
Yeah.
in it. Like,
Yeah, but that was okay. But I mean, it stops being crazy when you recognize that, like, what the plan is, right?
Yeah.
If you believe in the whole idea of what the plan is, and then you understand why. They would not want people healthy. And so
Yeah.
anything that makes you healthy is illegal, and anything that makes you sick is legal. And it's a
Like they
topsy-turvy
say, do
world.
the opposite.
Yeah, it's exactly
What did they say?
No.
What's that?
They always say, do the opposite of what the government
Yeah.
says.
Yeah,
Like
that's
the
exactly right. Yeah, do the
what
opposite.
they offer.
Yeah, and that's how you stay healthy. Just do the opposite.
Yeah.
But in terms of what we're going to have, it's unlikely that right on the lake. So it's unlikely that we're gonna have livestock. We'll probably have like some chickens and guinea hens, although they're extremely noisy. But we do want to have an exchange and barter system with the local farms. We're really lucky the area that we picked. We're surrounded by a lot of organic farms and homesteads, and so we really hope to be able to get in there. And so for what we're building orchards. We want to have just a huge food forest. So we're looking into the layers of the nut trees, and then you have the shrubs and the bushes and all that. And then we're looking at having sort of just a backyard garden as well, but on a larger scale, so that people can come and have their bit of it and use the community kitchen. And then everybody, I assume, is going to have their own little plot of garden as well. But we're going to have our own little plot of garden. But we would really want it to be, instead of being like a working farm or homestead, we want it to be a place of serenity, where people can just come, whether it's short term or long term. We want to have some retreats there at the Dome eventually. We want to be able to offer just people to come and just have a break from their day and do some healing in whatever way calls to them. So we have people interested in coming to the community who like to do, Reiki and forest bathing and all of those kinds of things. And then I have my healing, and my husband has his own. He's getting into integrative healing as well, and he has
He's
his
doing the
own
same
path.
thing that you do now that he's not working.
Yeah. He's a lot better at analyzing the tests, and he has more of an analytical mind. So he's getting into doing that part of it and working with the functional lab tests, where I do more of the emotional healing and the false beliefs, and I do the safe and sound program. I do. So I'm more of
Oh my
the
God, you could take
emotional.
couples and bring the couples
Yeah.
to your retreat, and then they get your all the deal with the fear and the blood tests and the supplements and do all of that work. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're excited for that, actually.
It sounds
We're
like you're
gonna go.
planning a trip.
I'm planning a trip.
I think you should. I think we would get along
Every woman wants to bring
spectacularly.
her husband there. They're like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Did I just let too much out of the goose out of the
I was
gander?
gonna say,
Is that the word?
we have to go visit Michael and Carrie up in Michigan. I
We'll
guess
just,
we could
go
diagonal up to Nova Scotia and go hang out too. So
Veer off a little bit, yeah.
Are you?
That's amazing.
So is your property also in Nova Scotia, or are you hopping provinces to be able to?
No, our property is in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
Next year, we've also been looking for another spot to go. We've been looking so we went to Dominican with an eye to potentially buying land. We probably won't be doing that. Then we looked at Mexico. We're looking at a couple of spots where we might potentially see if we can find a spot where we like. It would be something that resonates with us as opposed to something that we're trying to escape to.
Yeah.
So we're looking for a place that really calls to us. And so we're just going to do some traveling. And I personally would like to find a spot that I'm able to grow year round. We have a very short growing season here.
Yeah.
We intend to do some cold frames and things like that. But in terms of our actual growing season, it's relatively short. And I also don't like the winter. And Nova Scotia has really gross winters. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you kind of have similar.
So
We haven't had a winter in years.
Well, she's actually the inverse. So like we were looking at places to go, and she did not want somewhere that didn't have 4 seasons. She wanted 4 seasons. Yeah.
You want 4 seasons. Yeah.
I hate the summer. I'm like a winter baby.
Oh, are you?
If you are, like, I tell him, you can't, like, so I love the city of Austin. It's a beautiful artsy city. It's not very I guess anarchist, but at the same time there's a lot of shit going on there that I really like.
Well, it's different than it used to be now that all the New Yorkers and California people moved down there. But so anyway,
but I
Austin,
love
Texas?
it. To Austin, Texas, I love it. I went there for a slam poetry festival years ago. I've always loved it.
Yeah, but they don't have winter there.
I can't ever live there.
Right.
It was fucking 111 degrees and fucking 100% humid. I thought I was going to die. I had to walk everywhere. Oh my God.
So interestingly enough, there's actually a huge movement of people headed towards Mexico that share a lot of these belief systems. So I'm linked up. We actually had on one of our guests is the organizer for Anarchapulco, which is in Acapulco.
Anarchapulco, I love that.
Yeah, it's like the anarchist convention.
And they use human design. They use human design
in their organizational structure for their team and stuff. But so there's a ton of people moving in that direction. There's also one of the crypto platforms that I'm a huge believer in is a anti-censorship platform called Hive. And a number of the people that are developers live down in Mexico. And so I've actually talked to them, and I've talked to them about kind of like dealing with, because Mexico is kind of like a tale of two masters, right? It's either you live near Mexico City and it's the same old kind of like westernized government, regulation, taxes, that kind of thing. And then if you live outside of their control system, you have to deal with basically the cartels, right? Yeah. And a lot of them have essentially said that it's actually easier to live in the realm where the cartels are, as long as you know what you're doing, because the cartels just have a price, right? So like, as long as you meet the price, they leave you alone essentially,
that
right?
Did not sound exciting to me. Well, I mean, I understand, because we live under our own foot here.
Yeah,
I get it. But I guess because I've worked this system for so long, it doesn't seem as scary. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, no, it just depends on which master you want. That's basically what it is. I mean, most I'm like the etymology. I always get this word wrong. The etymology of the word anarchist is basically anarchist. It means like no masters, right? And so,
but then the cartels are your masters.
Well, yeah, but at the very least, you get a choice, right? Like that's
who you're going to pay off.
Yeah. But that being said, we will probably never move to Mexico because they don't have any snowfall.
I'll go to Idaho. I don't know if Idaho's any better, but we've been meeting lots.
I'll go to Idaho.
Yeah.
Idaho.
There was actually a story. I don't know if you saw this. Like
maybe I'll go to Canada. Maybe we'll have like a fucking
like 6-12
thing in Canada.
6-12 months ago. There was a lot of people are talking about like secession and splitting up the United States and all this weird stuff, right? And some people were talking about giving away the West Coast to Canada, but then the portions of Canada that were just north of like Idaho and Montana, like that area up there, I guess, be like, okay, we'll take those. And then Canada can basically have the West Coast and then the East Coast all the way down to like New York City.
So you're taking all the growing spots in the prairies.
Do you think that you will stay in Canada after watching what's happening? I mean, in Nova Scotia, are you very much of... There's some places I don't understand Canada that well. So when you say Nova Scotia, I have no idea where that is. But you were telling me West Canada is much more like who we are, right?
Well, we were actually talking about this before. So you go west, and Western Canada is more kind of like freedom-based until you
hit BC. And then BC is like California.
Yeah.
And so where do you sit in that? Where is Nova Scotia is kind of by
So do you know where
Montreal,
Maine? You know
right?
Maine. You know where
Yeah,
Maine is? Yeah. Okay. So
'cause you have to
we're east of Maine.
okay, so you're not in that area.
Not
Do
at
you
all.
worry that you're gonna have to like everyone's talking about the bird flu. I mentioned it earlier because the bird flu is now in the cow's milk, and we were talking the raw milk thing, which is so ridiculous.
For anyone who's unschooling, I'll share my Nova Scotia map now.
Oh, I love it.
There we
Oh,
are.
we're
We're
so
east of Maine.
close. That's not in
Yeah,
the
we're pretty
direction of
close to
Michigan.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, so
We're not
Nova
far.
Scotia,
I was
Prince Edward
thinking
Island.
Michigan was close.
Believe it or not, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island is also kind of
That's
like
where the mussels come from.
in the air. Well, yes, yeah. It's
Sure
also in the area where Goon was supposedly filmed.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
What was
Maybe-
filmed?
Goon. So, like, have
It's
you ever
such
watched
a
the
good
movie Goon?
No.
Goon is like a hockey film,
It's so good.
and
Okay.
it's about a guy who plays in the semi-pro Canadian hockey league,
It's the guy from,
and he's like an enforcer. So he's like he beats everyone up.
he's the guy
Okay.
from the American Pie movies.
Yes, one of the guys from the
Yeah.
American.
Okay.
It is a good movie though. But so
But you're
do
not a
you-
huge consumer of mass market.
I'm
stuff.
not. I
Do
know.
you feel that we've kept her on for almost 2 hours?
Oh yes.
Do you feel that you'll ever have to leave due to your belief system?
Will I
That you'll ever
have to leave? Will I won't ever have to leave. Will I choose to leave? Probably. I would say that something will call to me more than this does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you grew up in Canada from the time
Yeah.
you were. Yeah.
Yes, I lived in Ontario, which would be closer to Michigan. I lived there for 10 years, but other than that, I've always lived in Nova Scotia. But yeah, do I think that I'll want to leave at some point? Oh, I mean, I think that point's getting pretty close, actually.
Who knows when the next thing's
Yeah.
coming down the road? I feel like it is. And I don't know if you follow human design or anything, but I always say this every episode. I'm like, so you
2027.
ever hear of 2027?
Yeah.
I heard it was 2024. What's going on in
No.
2027?
2000 and lots of astrology and in human design itself and numerology, lots is pointing to 2024 being like a massive fucking shift. In human design,
2027.
I mean 2027. That's because she said 2024.
Yeah.
And I had too
I
much
threw
drink.
you
I
off.
filled my glass again.
No. But what's the phrase you say? We're midwifing
We're
right now, right?
midwifing
Like,
a massive shift and change that hasn't been seen since the 1600s.
Wow.
So like the gate of planning is what we've been in human design since 1612 or 1614.
Mhm.
And this is the first time it's shifting, and it's shifting to the gate of the sleeping phoenix. So the gate of planning is all about taking care of other people, and it's not self, it's creating, things like
centralized like
centralized
organizations
government, right?
of control.
Like we
and-
can take care of you, or like programs where we send aid to people that we don't even it would take hours to get there, right? That we
That
can't
is this one right now? That is this
That's
era?
what we're midwifing out of.
Out of.
And
And
as
so what are we
we-
going into?
We're going into the gate of the sleeping phoenix, which is
Oh,
about
it's
taking care of yourself,
Decentralization. Love
decentralization,
it.
individual. So we're getting there, but there's a lot of breakdowns. So I love it how my teacher Emma Dunwoody says. I love how she says it. The other day she had a class on it, and she's like, it's all about intimacy. We're gonna get back to being like loving ourselves, loving our partners, like that kind of thing. She's like, yeah, like a ton of people will die, but if you
A ton of people will die.
intimate,
That's what she
and
said.
she's like, it's okay. Those people have to die. Like that's it. And she just says it like so matter of fact. But it's true. Like when you stop the centralization of things, we've really we've put into process programs that people rely on that took
Dependency.
them away from doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
And we've done
So-
that across the fucking world.
Yeah.
And as these things fall down, as things like the United States and the governments and everything, all these different places, not just the United States, start to crumble because they no longer can be held up.
Mm.
And people start going, I need to take care of me. What's going to happen to all those people who we made dependent on us? People have to die. That's like the idea. And she said it. So she said it in a way that if you know it's happening, you take care of yourself. You're who you are intimately, who your family is, your close, intimate connections. You guys take care of each other. You're going to be fine, kind of a thing.
I think the flip side of it to think of is things like what you're starting.
That's the cure.
Will save people.
That's the cure.
Right? Like that's the way to think about it. The idea of creating communities where they're not dependent upon these kind of like centralized authority structures, and people can, take part in those communities and become members of them. Like those people will be saved from the fallout of what
every
happens.
community is going to need someone to talk about fear, because that's going to be a really fucking scary time.
Well, yeah.
Like, and it's like whenever we have massive change like this, it's just it's scary. And to have someone in a community who's able to walk through and talk about and be present with that's like really important. So yeah. So you're a rock star. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
It just hasn't come down the pipe. Just in 2027.
One of the things that I do talk about, though, you were talking earlier about, if we can save one life. But the thing is that, and this is really controversial because I don't talk about it a whole lot. But people die, right? And we spend our whole lives kind of fearing. That's our ultimate fear. Our ultimate fear is dying. And we fear it to the point that we forget to live. And so we're so afraid we control our lives in such a way so that we don't die, that we miss out on all of the opportunities of living. And in and of itself, why do we assume that death is frightening? A lot of spiritual practices believe that death is going home. Right. And so if we are going home, then it's only our ego that fears death. And if we can manage to get through to that, if we can manage to get through to the other side of that and not have that fear anymore, right? What does that open up for us in terms of living?
Yeah.
And I can tell you it opens up a lot. I mean, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here as well, but it opens up everything. It opens up, I don't have to worry about my child, going to school and graduating school and getting into college and getting a job and buying a house, blah, 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 blah. I don't have to worry about those things anymore because, ultimately what I want is for my child not to die, right? I want my child to be able to support themselves so they can feed themselves and all of those kinds of things. That's what we're going for. And we can break that down onto almost every single level is what is our worst fear? And if we can take all of those what ifs and go as far with it as we possibly can, what is the one thing that you're actually afraid of? And if we can look at that and figure out a way that it's actually not as scary as what we think in our subconscious, because it's not even in our brain. And if we can get past that, then we're opening up the door to not be afraid of anything. Right? Not being afraid of a shot, not being afraid of what's going to happen in 2027, or just being able to live from our experience of alignment. What are we pulled to do as opposed to what are we running away from? And I mean, I know you guys are on par with that.
And creating what no matter whether it be like your personal health or whether it be your family unit or your profession or how you conduct your life on a daily basis, creating a healthy environment where you can literally adapt to anything, right? Because of it, I think the Gnostics would say it's not whether or not a man dies or whether or not a person dies, that's tragic. It's whether or not they actually lived, right? So but
I can say too, like, having been through I think parental death is something that kind of brings that on. But like, I have absolutely, went through such a fear of dying after my parents died. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, it is what it is. Like, that's just a strange place to be in because I've never been in it. Right. Like, but I've witnessed and I've walked myself through it over and over and over. And I've gone through this, like, okay, well, what could this possibility be? What could this possibility be like? And I'm so far now confident in like the idea of like what the soul is and what, I work in the Akashic records. So what the soul is, what the higher self is, how it moves, that I don't have that fear. The only fear I think that lingers in me is the fear of not my life being in the hands of somebody else.
Right.
Like if you were like, so I did work with brain and spinal cord injuries for a while. And I worked with a bunch of people who were from the neck down. And so that is scary, to be in that position and not be able to control, like, wanting to leave to me, if and I would have to leave it up to another person, and who knows what and I can't express what I'm feeling, right?
Right.
That would be my fear. I
So
just
I'm curious about something when it comes to that. Do you have the belief that do you believe in reincarnation? Do you believe that we've lived before
do.
and we'll live again? Okay. Do you believe that when we're choosing to come back here that we choose what we want to experience?
Yes.
Okay. So if that is something that you had chose to do, then that was an experience that you
It was
chose
like
to
a
have.
lesson,
And I
right?
look at it like a movie. Like sometimes we go to comedies and sometimes we go to dramas and we cry the whole time. And sometimes we go to horror movies. And when we walk out of it, we're like, holy crap, that crap scared the shit out of me, right? But we went there to experience that. And so
Right.
if we chose to go through it, and
If our
if
life
we're
was
afraid of that and we're afraid of not having that experience, then we're preventing ourselves from having the experience that we came here to have.
Hmm.
And I mean, yeah, you
Yeah.
get what I'm saying,
I
right?
totally get what you're
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
'cause it's like, I totally believe we're handed the things and we create these lessons in our lives. Our
right.
soul creates these places, and I think believe we have free will here in this world. But, like, at the same time, so I get it. I don't think it would be comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. I
I
agree.
really
But
don't. Like, I
I
would prefer
agree.
not.
But I would also say that sometimes it's worthy to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's worth in being uncomfortable, and we can't see it because we can't see around those corners and we can't recognize what it actually is. And so many times that's happened in my life where I've said, I don't want this to happen. But
Hmm.
after it's happened, I can look back at it and say, but I'm so glad that I had it, even if I didn't want it.
Well,
And so often the things that we're afraid of end up being the things that we need to actually experience in order to get to the other side and get the things that we wanted to have out of this
Listen to
life.
me.
I don't. I think it's really important.
Macrodose me mushrooms.
Stop.
If
Wait.
What?
Well, no.
It's like, well,
That might be a direction, but
What did she say? I missed it.
no, she was talking about. So we've talked a lot with people about psychedelics and
I
kind
love mushrooms.
of
Mushrooms are one of my
unleashing.
I said, if I'm
like,
in that
perspective,
situation,
right?
macrodose me some
But
mushrooms.
yeah.
but
Oh, that's what you said. Yeah. Yes, definitely. That's where I
But I-
got all of
but I-
this stuff. Where do you
but I
think I
think-
came up with it? It didn't come from my brain. It came from psilocybin.
I think what's really important, that's a common thread there, is the idea of choice. I think
Right.
a lot of people, myself included throughout a lot of my life, didn't understand that what I was going through was legitimately my choice to
Right.
go through it, right?
Suffering
Whether or
is our
not you want
choice.
to talk about it cosmically in terms of how you were born and the life that you were born into, or just in that moment, like what you're feeling, how you're choosing to deal with
Always.
it is a choice. And
Always.
so you can choose to go in a different direction. I think a lot of people, because of fear and coercion, are kind of rabbit holed into thinking that there's only a small range of ways that you can experience life, or
Right.
solutions, like to the various life experiences that you're going
Just
through.
to, like, my
Right.
teacher, so I'm a yoga nidra guide, and my teacher, her father was hit by a drunk driver before. I don't know if it was before she was born or after she was born, but she grew up with him without the ability to move, and he had this beautiful world in his mind,
Mm.
and he taught her how to access that. And
Isn't that
that's how she
wonderful?
became a yoga nidra. And she is the most amazing. Allie Boothroyd. We should have her on one day. I
Yeah.
bet you she would
Love
come on.
that.
But like, so she, and that idea that he was in a wheelchair, he didn't have movement, right?
Mhm.
But he developed this beautiful inner world that
It's
he was
amazing.
able to pass on to his daughter,
Yeah.
who now, like, changes people's lives
Hmm.
all the
Yeah.
time. Like, that's hot right there. That's hot.
Do you believe in soul families?
I do believe in soul
Yeah.
families, but I also am very interested in. Have you heard of family constellation work? I have to look into this.
I have not heard of that.
It's
But
another kind of facet. But yes, I do believe in soul families.
So bridging from what you were just talking about with the man who came here and had the world in his head, I do believe also that sometimes we see these children who come in and they have cancers and they don't survive very long, and people look at God and say, how could you do this? But I do believe, like, my aunt used to work at a children's hospital, and she took blood, and what she noted about these children, that they're incredibly wise, like wise beyond their years. And
Mm.
I think sometimes that when what's that?
Well, our daughter had a best friend who died when she was 10 of neuroblastoma, and she was one of those people.
Yeah.
One of those people. So, and I think what happens is that before we come here, we choose to come here in order to impart some kind of wisdom and experiences to the people in our lives so
Mm.
that our soul families are able to experience those kinds of things that we want to experience while we're here, and being able to have those kinds of, I mean, I choose to look at everything as though it's happening for me instead of to
Yeah.
me. And so if you can look at these children who come in with these incredibly wise eyes and wise spirits, you can kind of see them passing something on that their families would never have had the opportunity to have had that child not gone through what they went through in their
Yeah.
short life.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's like a
Angelina was that
was it
person,
was
by
it
the way.
was it Native American thing, like thought
The
process
generation.
in terms of like you can essentially affect what, like 7
7
generations,
generations. Yeah. 3
right?
before and
7
3 after.
generations back too.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so, like, for instance, just the changes that you and your husband have experienced and gone through and have committed to are now going to positively
Forward
impact
and back.
your daughter and,
Mm.
potentially 7 generations or maybe even more, going into the future and even in the reverse.
I remember I was doing an
Mm.
ancestral healing because it was like a really one big, strong ancestral healing in my records in my paternal mother's, my father's maternal side. I don't know how that is, but whatever. In that line. And how long was I sick with that fucking nasal sinus infection? 3 months.
Oh, yeah,
I swear to God. No one else got sick. I'm
Oh,
working
my
on
God.
like literally this like empty womb, like the idea that this whole line of my lineage gave everything of themselves to everyone else and left nothing in their bowl, nothing in the room for themselves. And I'm healing this 3 months of an insane sinus infection that my
Wow.
teeth felt like they were going to fall out.
Oh, I just went through a sinus infection. It was awful. It was
Mm.
really I never had anything like that before. It was really awful.
This was definitely connected to the ancestral healing I was doing.
You need to stop doing work because whenever you do work,
I've been doing it again. I've been sick for 2 weeks. No one is sick like this. I'm coughing over and over again. You know what though? My shaman teacher always talks about it. She's like, when you're sick, it's like your body releasing something.
Yeah.
It's like you're releasing the DNA information, you're releasing the layers and the different pieces of our souls that no longer.
Not to mention the fact that what we were talking about earlier, when you're exposed to something, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become sick from it, right?
Yeah.
But
you totally back to that.
you could have a life experience, or you could be working on one of these deep-seated things that exist within your lineage, and it could, open you up or even weaken you or whatever you want to say, and it makes you more susceptible to that illness in that moment.
Yeah.
It's actually super interesting to think of, just like say COVID, from the standpoint of there's been a lot of kind of ripple effects that have come from COVID.
Oh yeah.
And the sickness and things like that. But also the other ripple effects are the people that have essentially changed their perspectives and woken up and things like that. And so I think it's naive to think that those things aren't related, right? The fact that you had this sickness that basically pinpointed weaknesses or openings that were within people's, whatever you want to call it, spiritual life, or within their balance, within their, even in their physical life.
Yep.
And though that experience has essentially changed people's direction materially for a long period of time.
Well, just look what you're going through. You totally like shifted and moved, and you're doing this awesome fucking shit with the village, with developing like a community center, with developing like regenerative kind of farming within your stuff, doing all this work with the integrative healing. Like your work is going to echo forward in generations. And it's like if you teach your daughter is now 13, aware and able to watch what you're doing and take that, and whether she's doing it purposely or not, it's still in there in a vibration of her. And who knows how that's going to affect the next generation. And that all happened because of maybe not all of it, because your integrative healing happened before that, but your husband getting involved.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Happened after COVID.
I say all the time that COVID was the best gift. I think it was a gift to the planet. I really do. Whatever
That's interesting.
COVID was,
A
I
lot of
think it was.
people refuse to acknowledge that these kind of things that they view as like maybe catastrophic or awful
Mhm.
are catalysts for positive
That's how
change.
important measles
Absolutely.
is. Measles
Well,
is
we
very
can have it
Wait,
catapult
wait,
us. What
I'm
was
sorry.
Go ahead.
that? I didn't hear what she said.
No, she started to go on a diatribe about
Measles
measles and natural immunity and that kind of stuff. But
Oh,
it's more
yeah.
than natural immunity. It's
Yeah.
cancers and psoriasis and skin issues. Very important, measles.
yes, yeah. But we're going on 2 hours.
I'm so sorry. We could talk forever. We have
And poor Michelle's husband
our kids are being taken care of
is
upstairs.
doing dad duties at the
At
time.
least we don't have 7 kids. Listen to me.
Oh,
At
that's
least we
true.
don't have 7
Yeah,
kids.
Look, we're gonna have to have you back on
That was
because
so much fun.
there's
Yeah,
so
it was
much that
great
we
to talk
could
to you guys.
continue to talk to.
Definitely say the website again because that's so anyone who's having issues like that, being able to contact you but do you have to be, here's a question, do you have to be in Canada to do all the
No.
testing and
In
stuff?
fact, I prefer that you're not in Canada because it's so
Okay.
hard to get the testing that we need to get here. But
But
yeah,
you
or
can
not
do it
hard, but
with
it's
people here.
expensive to get it here. Yeah, it's a lot more
Yeah.
expensive to work in Canada. But
So anyone
I
who
have
wants to look at like those genetics and the balancing, right, and getting into a place and talking about fear and moving, I feel like it's a whole person thing. And anything that looks at the whole person, I'm a big functional medicine, big DO person, big, like, I love naturopath Chinese medicine personally, but like, I'm like someone who looks at the whole system. That's the problem with, I think, our Western system is that we
That's right,
constantly
yeah.
take, it's just, you're just going to do working on my thyroid. Oh, you're just going to look at my gastro. Then you're just going to look at this, right?
You can't
That
separate
it's
it.
like, you
Yeah.
can't, even like dentists who don't think like about all of the stuff in the mouth with the organs and the
Absolutely.
different brain, you have to do it. And so it sounds like what you do, and it has to do with being a full looking at the full picture. And anyone who does that, you're always going to get information that can help you. So
it's newperceptionwellness.com.
New
Right.
perception. Well, did we put
That's
that
it.
in the thing?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're
I put out
definitely
a
gonna
lot
have
of free
And he
content.
wasn't even unschooled. He's a public school kid.
yeah. No,
Made
actually,
it through.
wait,
There's
hold
hope
on.
for
I'm
some
gonna
of us.
lengthen out this conversation. But no, I mean, my spiritual and religious arc comes from a very kind of like devout, like Baptist upbringing.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
what's funny is I would actually say that while I don't necessarily like hold true to like a lot of that dogma anymore, part of my upbringing was going to a religious grammar school and then going to secular public school and then questioning the things that were taught in my science class. Right.
Right.
But
Because you
then-
had that creationist kind of.
Well, yeah.
beginning.
So from a creationist standpoint, but that being said, I'm not really a creationist anymore. Right.
Right.
But it kind of like sowed that seed of like,
In the end, you're a Buddhist.
I'm just not going to believe anything because you're telling it to me. Like, I actually want to see the proof and, I want to feel it and I want to explore it, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with a book called A Course in Miracles?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
You are like the eighth. So my parents showed me this years ago and I read it, but you're like the eighth person in the last, maybe I need to reread it. You're like the eighth person in the last week and a half that said the name of this book to me.
Well, this is how it comes to you. They don't advertise A Course in Miracles. It's not like religion or
We
organized
haven't,
religion
yeah.
where they're like banging on your door. Nobody's going to bang on your door and say, "Hey, can I introduce you to A Course in Miracles?" But it just happens to come up in conversation. And that's what happened to me. I was listening to Wayne Dyer and Byron Katie and all of these people. And like 3 or 4 different people mentioned it at the same time. And I was like, I got to check out what this is, A Course in Miracles. And that's how I came to it. And that's how people come to it, is through just hearing about it and all of a sudden being like, I have to check it out. And maybe it's your time and maybe it's your not. But it's become my spiritual touchstone, I guess.
So it is most definitely something that's on our like bucket list to create a book club.
We
And-
totally want to do a book.
Yes.
We want to create a
Great
book
idea.
club
Yeah.
and do either like a Zoom or something like that, like once a month,
Yeah.
and like tackle some of these.
Texts.
some of them can be spiritual, some of them can be, health and healing.
I know you want Anatomy of the State.
I totally want Anatomy of the State, but the reason, if you've never read Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard, you most definitely should.
You need
It will turn you an anarchist literally overnight. But
that's too late.
But so I want to talk about it from the spiritual standpoint, because I think not enough people talk about say politics and centralized governance. They talk about the a lot of people throw around the word fascism. There's a lot of fascism that exists in our society, and unfortunately the people that are pointing their fingers at what they think is fascism
are the fascists.
They're probably the fascists themselves, and they don't even understand it, or maybe they do and they're just trying to divert people's attention. But there is so many kind of spiritual aspects of anarchism and anarchy, and depending on what word you want to put on it, it could just be talking about freedom and self-sovereignty and individualism.
If you look at anarchy, that's the big thing on the government's list right now.
Well, yeah,
because people see it differently.
Well, yeah, because they think
you would accept the V is for Vendetta anarchism.
Well, no, they think anarchists throw Molotov cocktails and stuff like that. Anarchists homestead and they homeschool. And
they just take their people out of the system.
They teach skepticism of fiat currency.
Question authority.
Yes, yeah.
They are ungovernable.
Exactly.
That's right. Oh my God.
Dude,
she's like, I got to get off here. I'm going to give them a
the check is in the mail.
On it. But so what is the name again? Say the name of the website.
Oh, yeah. It is newperceptionwellness.com.
Perceptionwellness.com. If you're interested, if you have any issues, I'll tell you what, I'm perimenopausal. Do you work a lot with perimenopausal women?
Oh, yes.
This is all of my friends. We are all going through it.
The moment she identified that she thought she was going through perimenopause, everything became perimenopause.
It's so true. It's so true. Your whole body is changing.
Everything. Yeah. So I have a Facebook group as well, where I share a lot of free info, and you can, if you have questions, it's best to post it in there. Can I mention that one as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Root Cause Natural Whole Body. What is the name of it? It's really long. I wanted to hit everything.
Can
just
you
so.
Put it in the comment?
I'm going to pull it up on the screen if I can.
Yeah, I think it. What is it called? I got to find it now. It is Root Cause Natural Whole Body Healing. Root Cause Natural Whole Body Healing. I've just started it not too long ago because Facebook.
You didn't put it all up there.
Hold on, it's
Root Cause Natural Whole
Body Healing. All right, come on, Mark Zuckerberg.
There it is, right there. Yeah, are you putting it up?
I am. I'm sharing it
so people can see it.
Yes.
Yeah, because there are so many women right now, Gen X women coming to this age.
That's it.
Middle, and we're everywhere, and we don't understand because all these people are being put on hormones that are messing with people's systems in so many ways.
Yeah.
And so I will definitely share this around because we need it. My naturopath was just like, we need to get you in and talk about perimenopause. It's not just me, it's everywhere. Everything I have is symptomatic of other things. So yeah, I think it's so important. Stop laughing at me. I'm serious. He doesn't get it.
Serious. I know you're serious.
But so many women I know. And so if there's a place to go to ask a question, if we can go to you to get blood work to find out what the fuck is going on, this is a time when you need it the most because it's so confusing. So confusing.
It is.
I find
you're gonna send me to.
I find it very confusing. With that, I want to say thank you so much. Like I said, we're gonna have to have you on again because this was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great chat.
And hopefully your other half can maybe make it sometime in the future too.
Yeah, so that'd be awesome. I'm sure he'd love to do that. Yeah.
So with that, I hope everyone has a fantastic Sunday. If you made it this long, help us out, sub, like, upvote, give us a thumbs up, and share everything out there. And definitely check out Michelle's website and see what she's offering.
And you'll put a link to the Facebook too, right? You should add that to the info.
Hold on. I will throw it
Just add
into
it
the
into the
comments
info.
right now. Ready?
Yeah, throw it into the comments.
Hold on 1 second. It's going
So it's
in
there.
right now. It is in the
Awesome.
comments, people.
Yeah.
Thank
All right.
you.
So, with that, thank you so much, Michelle. Have a fantastic evening.
You
and,
too. Nice to meet you both.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk to you again in the future.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Shackle your mind, it's time to redefine. You're the spiritual quest, leaving the rest behind. Ungovernable, breaking through the status quo. We untamable, watch our spirit elevating consciousness. Yeah, we on the rise. No system can hold us down. We're reaching new heights, breaking through the chains, breaking through the wall. Ungovernable energy, watch the empire fall.